Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke, so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Left of the box. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. I'm starting, I'm in a bit of an awkward position because I have a very heavy cat on my lap. Bernappy has decided to join me. He knew exactly when I was about to start my live stream, and so he thought, do you know what? I'm just going to go and make myself part of it. So he is on my lap right now. You can't see him because my camera does not point down to my lap for reasons. Hello, Looney Tunes 9000, Hermit Horologist, Genie Bottle, and Bee Cat. Welcome to the Sandbox. Yes, I have it on good authority that the Surfs aren't streaming this week, so I thought I'd take advantage of the opening and schedule. Unfortunately, I couldn't start earlier today. I had some things on the go, and I do want to wrap up at around 7. But tomorrow, I'll start streaming earlier, taking up the time slot that the Surfs would normally be in. And that stream could go on longer, and then if there's any bleed over, then I'll do more on Friday. So lots of live streaming in the next couple days because there's a lot to cover. I'm getting distracted by a kitty cat on my lap. But also, I got some good news today, finally. Something that has been kind of sitting over my head for years, literally. And my housing situation is secure. I got confirmation today that my housing is secure. And it's something, like I said, that I've been waiting on for years to kind of get that sorted out or figured out and waiting to hear on things. So massive, massive relief. I can finally start settling in because this is now my home. And I feel incredibly fortunate because I know how difficult it is to secure good housing. I have a nice apartment I'm in. Like, I'm so, so fortunate that I got where, yeah, just especially covering this, politics day in and day out. I know how difficult it is. And, I feel a little guilty, like survivor guilt type thing, but, my situation shouldn't be a one-off. Housing first. Everyone who needs a place to live should be able to get a nice, like not just, a box to live in, but a place that they can actually call home. And I'm just super relieved. It's a guy kitty cat on my lap, and he sheds like crazy. Anyway, just looking at the sandbox. There's a bit of delay, so I know it's a little difficult to have like a regular conversation with people. And Looney Tunes 9000 saying what Sandy doesn't know is that there's no left past 10 this week. I kind of figured that, given, the situation the letter hack is in. But I have other things on the go this evening. Somebody was kind enough to say that they wanted to make me food. I'm going to take them up on it. Plus, I just need to go on my walk and unwind. Like I said, the information, the news I got today, huge relief. I need to kind of decompress with it to let it kind of sink in. Yeah, I want to pick up the slack for the other leftist programs that aren't on this week because it's more than just, keeping people informed of the news. And because it's not like I'm picking up the slack of covering American news. It's that, we've built up quite the communities that we share across the live streams. And I know that it's important to people to be part of these communities, to feel connected to people. And this is why, come the holiday season in December, I will continue to live stream as much as I can because I know people want that space. They want to be with others that they connect with. And it's important to have that. Like without having that in a day, it can feel kind of empty. So I want to provide that in the sandbox for the people who normally hang out and chat with other people in the sandbox, because a lot of crossover in our different live streams. And, I just want to make sure that people have that chance to say hi to others, see how everyone's doing, and that sort of thing. Because, yeah, it's been stressful weeks for people with, the political situation in the news, with Lebanon, with the American election, the storms that hit the States, friend of the show, the letter hack. As far as I know, he's still without power. So, yeah. Let's see. And I'm getting so distracted with. I'm very discombobulated. Like, it's good news, but it's very, it takes a lot. It's a lot of energy being released right now in me. So it's hard for me to focus, but I have a lot to focus on. There's a lot of Canadian news to get to. Okay, you're like killing the circulation in my lap, cat. Look at this monster. Oh, this absolute chunker. Oh, but I move around a lot, so it's hard to have a cat in my lap. But yeah, now I can work on like really settling in here too, making this a home. Yes, my brain will be all over the place today. Yeah. Anyway, why don't we just kind of get into it? It's not a lot of positive news today because, I'm covering politics, which is a very big contrast to how I'm feeling right now. Like, part of me is like, I don't know if I want to do this because I'm on such a high. But, it's important news. And I went through the work of getting it all together because, things are happening in Canada. Lots of things. And like I said, I have a lot of stuff to go over, so I will be streaming tomorrow. I'll be starting early, probably around 3 p.m., which is like the earliest I've started during the week. I've started that early on a weekend, but not during the week. And then again on Friday, if I have any more stuff that I need to get to that I haven't gotten to yet, but I do have a hard out on Friday. I have plans in the evening that I can't not be there for. So anyway, Bad Lefty has also come join the sandbox. Why don't we get into it then? Lebanon has been in the news recently because Israel has been launching attacks and Hezbollah has been launching attacks. To me, this is a little bit more complicated because Hezbollah has actually been launching attacks quite frequently against Israel. But still, it's very one-sided. One has an Iron Dome and is supplied by the American and Canadian government with weaponry, and the other side is not any of that. But, is Hezbollah good? Well, not really, no. Is Hamas good? No, not really. But, we can understand why Hamas exists and the situation that led up to it, because again, this didn't all start just a year ago. And it's hard to believe that the 1-year anniversary of this this current fighting has started. It's been almost a year. But the reality is it's been going on for decades and decades and decades. And it is escalating a lot over the last few days. And we have politicians here in Canada that, like to make comments on it, talk about it. They never mention the casualties in Gaza, but they'll always be concerned about what's happening with Israel, and they're always very one-sided on it. And, I always get suspicious of where things are on the political scale. If both the conservatives and the liberals are speaking positively of it. then I get a little suspicious of it, because when they agree on things, it's usually at the detriment of people like me, people who live with less, people with disabilities, more socialist ideas, because more often than not, the conservatives and liberals vote together to vote down motions from the NDP that would really benefit everyone. And so even with global politics, when the two sides of them start agreeing on things, I get a little suspicious, as I should, because, patterns. So, of course, with the assassination, execution of a Hezbollah leader, there's been, talk from both Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre. Let's get into their comments a little bit. So Pierre Poilievre tweeted out, the elimination of Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah means justice for countless families that have lost loved ones at the hands of this genocidal terrorist. That's a very... There's a genocide going on in Gaza right now that they never mention. They never mention the genocidal regime of Israel right now and what Israel is doing. But it's always, the genocidal Hamas, the genocidal Hezbollah. But it's never, trying to hold Israel accountable for their actions. The people of Israel, Lebanon, and the Middle East have suffered for decades as a result of his violence and terror backed by the criminal regime in Tehran. Hezbollah should immediately cease their attacks on the people of Israel, stop using innocent people in Lebanon as human shields, and lay down their arms so this war can come to an end. Conservatives will always stand with our allies against terrorism around the world. Right now, I think Israel is being the biggest terrorist state. It's just... what they are doing, again, is so one-sided, because even if you look at the attacks that Hezbollah has done compared to the attacks that Israel has done, there's no comparison. Like, should Hezbollah be launching rockets? No. I don't want any innocent people to be hurt. But one side is doing far, far more damage and killing a lot more people than the other side. One side is refusing to go to the table to talk for a ceasefire. One side is being backed up by other, powerful nations around the world. One side is being supplied with weapons of mass destruction. It's not that complicated in who the aggressor really is in this situation and where all the power lies in this situation. This would stop right now if Israel stopped. That's it. If Israel, in good faith, went to the table to talk for a ceasefire, I don't think it would be Hezbollah and Hamas that would break that ceasefire, because they want one. It's Israel that doesn't want one. And yeah, the surf's just saying, I think the people of Lebanon has suffered from the bombs Israel keeps dropping on them. Well, let's compare and contrast to what Justin Trudeau said about this.
This person said, blame the homeless who felt entitled to turn bus shelters into their homes.
Organization
the elderly people who would use them how they are intended are now too scared to go near them. Okay,
more must be done immediately.
So your concern is that somebody is using a shelter as a shelter, and that's not how they were intended to be used.
You mean
but also, you're mad that a person who has no home tried to use a public shelter
in Lebanon
to shelter themselves. So is your concern here the bus shelter, or is it the lack of accessible shelter space for that person that isn't a bus shelter?
But you didn't acknowledge,
if you don't want an unhoused person using a bus shelter as a place to live, they need a place to live. Otherwise, you're just telling them to go be homeless somewhere else. What does that solve, other than taking away that person's shelter? Do you think somebody lives in a bus shelter because they like it there, or because it's the best available option? If you want them to go somewhere else, provide a better option. This isn't complicated. But you'd rather victim blame, wouldn't you?
This is the same bullshit he's been spewing for the past year. And do you know what these words have done? Nothing. He says this, nothing changes. He keeps saying this, nothing changes. Canada, not as influential as the United States when it comes to what's happening over there, but we still do have a fair bit of influence. We still could be doing a lot more to end the hostilities over there, to, pressure Israel to stop doing what they're doing. We have a lot more power than, just saying, yeah, we would kind of like to see a ceasefire. We urge calm. We must protect civilians. Again, he says that all the time, protect civilians, humanitarian aid and all that sort of stuff. But has Israel ever listened? No. They just keep on continuing, and Justin Trudeau just keeps on saying the same old, same old. And the Serfs was also replying to this, oh, if you're against immense suffering in the region, you should see what Israel did. And just absolute devastation and destruction. And then we have, again, on the conservative side. So this douche canoe said something quite unacceptable. Again, I covered the question period a lot in a couple live streams ago, and just the shenanigans that happen there, and who gets called out, and who gets in trouble. And it's astonishing what the Conservatives can get away with saying in the House. But when Justin Trudeau calls out the homophobic comment that the Conservatives yelled out, he's the one that gets chastised. But here we have a Conservative MP, Michael Barrett, saying something completely horrendous against a member of the NDP, Heather McPherson. And what kind of trouble does he get in? Nothing really. Let's listen to what he had to say to her.
Finding themselves in a situation where, and I don't know, Speaker, I don't know if I hear the sound of a pager beeping back there, but maybe that member can quiet it.
The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, that is a disgusting comment, and he should be asked to retract that. That is clearly referring to pagers that has been used as weapons that have taken the lives of innocent people, including children. I asked this member, he should be apologizing for that, but he should also be apologizing for the slander he used in this chamber yesterday.
Finding themselves in a situation.
Absolutely disgusting that he can get away with saying that in the House, because, it was a choice. It was a conscious choice to use the term pager because, he works in Parliament. He would know we don't use pagers. It's all cell phones and things of that sort up here. I can't remember the last time I've seen a pager on anyone in Canada. Like, he knew exactly what he was doing when he said that disgusting comment towards her. But what consequences will he face? None. The Conservatives get away with so much bullshit. So much. But again, I get concerned when the Liberals and the Conservatives are horrendous on the same issue. Because when it comes to what's happening in the Middle East, the Conservatives and the Liberals are just so pro-Zionist that it is disturbing what they will say, what they will promote. So we have here this Liberal MP for Eglinton Lawrence, and what he had to say that he was just kind of putting out there in the stratosphere. And this was tweeted out by Samira. She's an independent journalist who's been covering a lot of the protests at the universities, the anti-genocide protests, the pro-Palestinian protests. And this is in reference to a little while ago. And I covered this on my live stream at the time. More Jewish vigilante groups roaming the U of T campus today, this one calling themselves J-Force. And these groups have been tied to actual hate groups, like labeled hate groups here in Canada. But let's see what he had to say.
Marco Mendicino, Member of Parliament for Eglinton Lawrence. Since last October 7th, we have seen a massive spike in anti-Semitic hate crime that has directly impacted our community. And that's why today I'm pleased to announce the creation of the Canada Community Security Program. This is a new expanded program that is focused on protecting our community, protecting you. It's going to include funding that will see third-party security personnel.
Third party? We're just going to be hiring people to be security? For what?
And more protection for daycares. What does this mean? It means that you know that when you're out in the community, you're going to be better protected. I'm going to have more to say about exactly where this new funding is going to be going in our community, but I wanted to make sure that I shared it with you first. Marco Mendicino, Member of Parliament.
Yeah. So he guaranteed funding for Jewish vigilante groups to roam the streets and take it upon themselves to do what they please with those they deem threatening. Great idea, Mark. What could possibly go wrong? Can all communities get in on this? Like, why is it that vigilante groups are allowed when it comes to this particular thing? Like, the reality is, I would not feel safe if one of these vigilante groups were walking around. I wouldn't feel like my safety is of concern. And what they label as hate speech, what they label as a threat, is so much as seeing a keffiyeh. Then suddenly that person is a threat. If somebody is wearing a keffiyeh, if they write on the sidewalk in chalk, Free Palestine, that person is a threat suddenly. Like, again, it's very one-sided up here, and the liberals and the conservatives are lockstep together on this issue. The NDP, and again, only members, certain members within the NDP are the ones who are being really vocal. It took almost a year for Jagmeet Singh to come out with strong statements against it, what's happening in Gaza. But other MPs within the NDP have been very outspoken. And one of them, again, is Heather McPherson, who was the target of that horrendous comment earlier. And she says there's an urgent need for an emergency debate in order to allow parliamentarians to address the crisis in Lebanon. Pleased that Speaker agreed, and we will debate this crisis later today. So here's what she had to say about that.
Mr. Speaker, there is an urgent need for an emergency debate in order to allow parliamentarians to address the crisis in Lebanon. As we know, many of us represent constituents who are terrified and whose families are trapped in this conflict, and we must discuss what Canada can do to promote a ceasefire in the region. On Monday evening, Israeli forces began a ground incursion into Lebanon. This follows a week of heavy bombing in densely populated Lebanese cities by Netanyahu's extremist government, and rockets launched towards northern Israel by Hezbollah, a listed terrorist organization under Canadian law. The use of explosive weapons across Lebanon and Israel is causing massive civilian casualties, particularly for children. Thousands have fled for safety, and a ground incursion risks escalating this conflict further, threatening a wider regional war. Meanwhile, the genocide in Gaza continues. Mr. Speaker, this issue is urgent and greatly distressing to many, many Canadians.
I don't think I've heard a single liberal or conservative call what's happening in Gaza a genocide. They might exist. I don't recall one. It is like, how can you see what's going on there? And, keep in mind that politicians, especially like Justin Trudeau, will have all the information. He has all the high security information, sensitive information. He knows damn well what's happening over there. And yet, what does he still say? We'll get to that in a moment.
In Lebanon, Canada has offered extremely limited evacuation assistance, including commercial flights, many of which have been cancelled. At least 2 Canadian citizens have already been killed in the past week. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your careful consideration of this request.
So, speaking of the flights that Canada is so graciously helping people with, Ottawa reserving commercial airline seats to get Canadians out of Lebanon. Okay, that sounds, the headline itself sounds okay. Evacuees are responsible for covering the cost of the ticket, government says. Okay, so the second headline there is horrible. Canadian citizens, yeah, we'll reserve you some seats, but you gotta pay for it yourself. Aren't we so kind? The federal government has started booking blocks of seats on commercial flights to help Canadians get out of Lebanon. I'm pretty sure we also have things called airplanes here in Canada that could help with that. Canada has secured seats for Canadians on the limited commercial flights available. If a seat is available, please take it, Global Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly posted to X, formerly Twitter. Canadians need to leave now. You could, instead of, reserving these seats, and which many will get canceled and all that sort of stuff, maybe start talking to Israel about stopping what they're doing. How about that? How about tell Israel, hey, could you stop bombing people? Because many Canadians won't be able to get to these flights, won't be able to get on these flights, won't be able to afford the flights will be canceled, and that's only people with a Canadian passport. There's so many other innocent people there, civilians, children, being killed in these attacks. A person's value shouldn't be dependent on which passport they hold. We should be demanding Israel stop what they're doing. Don't give me this both sides need to de-escalate bullshit, because we know Israel won't. They've made it quite clear what their intentions are. Canada needs to do more to pressure Israel to stop. Officials from Global Affairs Canada told Radio Canada the government took this step because commercial flights out of the country are becoming scarce as Israel's military action against what it calls Hezbollah's targets in Lebanon continue. Again, maybe tell Israel to stop. That would save a lot of lives. Since October of last year, the government has been advising Canadians in Lebanon to leave while commercial options are still available. Those advisories ramped up over the summer as tensions in the Middle East escalated. Because we all know how easy it is to just up and leave, So again, instead of encouraging Israel to stop what they're doing, Canada is expecting people with a special passport to maybe spend money they don't have, go into debt, lose their entire life savings to come over here to where? Like, some of them will have friends and families to come to, but other Canadian citizens over there won't necessarily have those networks here. You're asking them to give up their lives, like their livelihoods, their neighborhoods, their communities, to come over here instead of, encouraging Israel to stop what they're doing so that they can continue to live in their home. The government says Canadians are responsible for paying the cost of the tickets. So they'll just book the tickets, and then you have to hope that with the scarcity of the flights going out, and you are lucky enough to get one of those seats, that you can pay the absolute overcharged, inflated costs of a flight to get out of there. In her post, Joly said there is a government program to assist those who can't afford it. Oh, what kind of program would be so generous? Please ensure you are registered with our embassy in Beirut and indicate you want help leaving, Joly said, because that's easy to do in that chaos. If you need financial assistance, loans are available. Wow, that's so good of Canada to provide loans for overpriced plane tickets. So in the chaos of everything that's happening there, just pack up whatever you can onto an airplane, get onto an airplane at overcharge, we'll give you a loan. Keep in mind that once you leave, chances are your home will be destroyed because Israel will continue to bomb. Appearing on CBC's Power and Politics Friday night, Jolie told host David Cochran the best way to leave Lebanon is through the Beirut airport. Canadians just have to register through the GAC online, Jolie said. We've been able to secure priority for Canadians on these flights. Jolie said if an evacuation becomes necessary, Canada has an agreement with Cyprus, Greece, and Turkey. I've been in contact with all these foreign ministers to make sure these countries are still on board, she said. We're also working with key governments, the Australians, the Americans, and also the French governments to make sure we adapt our evacuation plans together. Because what we learned from the evacuation in 2006 is we can't compete for spaces at the port. Oh, what's this? Canada deploys another 150 troops to the region. That doesn't bode well for maybe, talking to Israel to de-escalate the situation. If you're here like, we'll give you some people to help fight. In an interview with CBC's The House, Defense Minister Bill Blair said the flights will get people to safety and mentioned Cyprus as a possible destination. That doesn't mean reparation all the way back to Canada, Blair told host Catherine Cullen. We will get them to safety. That's our responsibility. As far as where they go from there and what they do when they get there to that place of safety, that remains their responsibility. So yeah, we'll just help you get a flight out of the war zone, but then you're on your own. We're telling you to leave your home last minute with whatever you can handle, probably spend your life savings on a ticket. And then once you get to another country, you're on your own. We're not going to necessarily help you back to Canada or anything like that. No, you're on your own. And so if you don't have any connections or networks in those countries that you get to, well, that's kind of on you then, isn't it? What kind of bullshit support is that from the Canadian government? And, it's so blatantly obvious who they favor. Because you look at the refugees that came over from Ukraine. I forget how high the number is, but it was like an astronomically high number. And we had no problems helping them get over here. But to help Canadian citizens from Lebanon get over here, that's requires work. You can't expect the government to arrange all of that. Absolutely disgusting from this government. Blair said the government is prepared to evacuate up to 20,000 people, the number of people who are registered with the GAC. There is an estimated 40,000 Canadian passport holders in the region, he said. So we'll help maybe half of the Canadian citizens. On Thursday, he ordered another 150 soldiers to the region. It's simply a precautionary at this point. We are concerned about the escalating situation in Lebanon and monitoring it very carefully, Blair said. Who is doing the escalating? Who? Are you that concerned about it? Maybe could you then talk to Israel to say, hey, could you stop escalating the situation? Because they will use, if Hezbollah strikes back right now, then it's oh, see, so now we're justified in firing back at them because look, Hezbollah just launched some rockets towards us. You can't keep on using that as an excuse when, again, Israel's the one that is just wiping out apartment blocks. Israel has the ability to target the weaponry and stuff of that sort. Hezbollah isn't exactly bare bones when it comes down to what weapons they have and whatnot. But again, one side has far more power than the other side. One side is receiving far more support from other powerful nations than the other side. Israel is the nation that needs to de-escalate the situation. But we've seen they have no interest in doing that. They actually say de-escalation by escalation, because that always works out so well. So Blair continues, there are some circumstances where evacuation may not be possible. Yeah, like when your apartment complex gets bombed or you're stuck in traffic and your car gets bombed and your body's incinerated, like what happened to the Canadian couple that were trying to flee the situation. Blair also said the government is prepared for the possibility of a marine evacuation, although such measure could prove challenging after the Port of Beirut explosions in 2020. The situation is complicated, and I believe that one was just an accident. There was a very big explosion in the silos, and I believe that if this is the explosion I'm thinking of, that was just an accident that happened in the port, and it caused massive devastation to the port because that was a massive explosion. But I believe it was just things being, not looked after and stuff. An accident of neglect, from what I recall, if it's the explosion I'm thinking it is. The situation is complicated, and we know that there are less available ports resources in Beirut. We are looking at other options, particularly in the northern part of the region, Blair said. We are prepared to do whatever can be done to assist Canadians in the region. And tell Israel to stop. It's not rocket science here. There are a lot of them there. On Friday, the Canadian Border Service Agency, CBSA, also announced it issued a temporary halt on removals to Lebanon. Removals include departure orders which direct individuals to leave Canada within 30 days. Exclusion orders preventing them from returning to Canada for a year, and deportation orders banning them from returning to Canada. I glanced over this article. On Friday, the CBSA also announced it issued a temporary halt on removals to Lebanon. Removals include departure orders, which direct individuals to leave Canada within 30 days. Oh, okay. So people who are in Canada aren't being forced back to Lebanon right now. Got it. That's what I'm hoping this is saying. Exclusion orders preventing them from returning to Canada for a year, and deportation orders banning them from returning to Canada. So from the sounds of it, if I'm reading this correctly, those have been put on hold. So anyone who is going to be deported to Lebanon is being, forgiven for now. Or people who are outside of Canada that are from Lebanon that weren't allowed to come back here for some reason, they're now allowed to go back if they can. That's how I'm reading it. I'm hoping that's the bare minimum Canada can do is say, so we're not going to deport you into a war zone. The agency said the temporary halt does not apply to anyone who is inadmissible to Canada on grounds of criminality, serious criminality, intentional or human rights violations, organized crime, or security. CBSA said the temporary halt will be lifted once the situation in Lebanon stabilizes. So yes, basically it's not trying to deport anyone to Lebanon right now, unless criteria of that. So here, again, this is just from October 2nd, today. Justin Trudeau had some comments on it. Let's see what he had to say about this very important topic. And let's see if I can get through this without grinding my teeth flat.
I just got off a call with the other G7 leaders regarding the situation in the Middle East. We unreservedly condemn Iran's ballistic missile attack against Israel. It is further destabilizing action by this terrorist regime.
You're condemning what Iran has done. But did you condemn what Israel did when they killed hundreds of people by wiping out apartment blocks? Because that happened before Iran launched those bombs.
In the region, putting civilians at risk and running the risk of a wider war. Obviously, Israel has the right to defend itself against these attacks. At the same time,
why is it only Israel has that right? And it seems like no other state in the Middle East has the right to defend themselves from Israel. But Israel always has that right to defend themselves, even against attacks that they kind of initiated. You know, attacks that are in response to what Israel has done. But Israel has that right to defend themselves. No other nation does, just Israel. Then again, Justin Trudeau is on camera saying Zionist should not be a dirty word. And the ironic thing here is in Canada, and we'll get a little bit into it, I believe I have it set up for today, where we have like hate speech laws that include you're not allowed to promote a genocide. What exactly is Justin Trudeau doing here when he keeps on saying Israel has a right to defend itself while tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of people are slaughtered? When Israel is participating in a genocide, but Justin Trudeau still says, well, Israel has a right to defend itself. You know, no defense requires a genocide.
We have to try and do everything we can to avoid a wider war, to protect civilians, and to get humanitarian aid into affected regions.
Again, this is the same bullshit he's been saying since the beginning of all of this. And how effective has that been? That we need to get humanitarian supplies into Gaza. Like, he says it all the time, but how much of that has actually been accomplished? None of it.
We, as an international community, we have to continue to do everything we can to call for peace and stability.
Everything we can other than ask Israel to stop.
Which means calling for a ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, and getting, again, back on track for a two-state solution where a peaceful, secure, stable Israeli state is living alongside a peaceful, secure, stable Palestinian state.
One side keeps refusing to do a ceasefire. One side. And then Nora Leto is just, she's an independent reporter here in Canada as well, independent journalist. Trudeau must be forced to explain why murdering civilians, some 60 in the past 24 hours, is something that Israel has the right to do, while Iran has no right to take out Israeli military bases. And she also points out this, because Justin Trudeau tweeted this out yesterday, saying Canada unequivocally condemns Iran's reckless attack against Israel. It puts innocent civilians at risk. We fully support Israel's right to defend itself against this attack. Why did Iran launch that attack? Did they just wake up one morning and think to themselves, we're just going to bomb Israel? Did that just happen out of the blue? Why? Why? And he says, and we We repeat our call for de-escalation across the region for the safety of all civilians. Who's doing the escalation? You know, Iran hitting back is not an escalation. Like, do you just expect Iran to do nothing as Israel continues to bomb them and have a ground force go in? Like, seriously, Justin? What do you expect Iran to do when it's Israel who keeps on hitting them? Absolutely disgrace of a leader. And Pierre Poilievre would be worse, no doubt about it. But it's just the fact that this is like one of the things that Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre are totally in lockstep with. Supporting Israel's right to defend itself, which really should be, you know, a genocide denying term right now. If you use that term, it should be because you're denying a genocide. It's genocide denial right there if you say Israel has a right to defend itself, because no country has the right to commit genocide for some sense of self-defense. None. Just absolutely horrid. Like, for almost a year now, this has been going on in its current state, because again, this has been going on for decades. Hamas didn't attack out of the blue, just like Iran isn't bombing Israel out of the blue. There are reasons that they did what they did. And, you know, they're responding, like, that's the thing. They're responding to a situation that Israel is causing right now. And, you know, we'll never know the true extent to how many people have died in Gaza. Like, that's, you can't count how many people are under the rubble. Like, when entire communities are wiped out and there's no one left to report people missing. Like, Gaza is just one great big gravesite right now. But Israel has the right to defend itself. It was Mehdi Hassan, I think, that said that, you know, how did he phrase it? That nothing justified the violence on October 7th, but October 7th has been justifying the violence ever since. And that shouldn't be the case. Like, it's just... My fear is that Israel won't stop until they have succeeded with what they want to do, or until other nations pressure them to stop. And it doesn't look like the other nations are going to be pressuring them to stop. So I worry a lot about what's happening there, and for all the innocent civilians over there, you know, Canadian and non-Canadian civilians. Nobody should be caught up in this mess. Okay, I'm going to check the sandbox after I get my cat to stop doing what he was doing. Cool. I hear them get into things. Thank you so much, John Martinez, for the $10. I really appreciate that, with the Free Palestine. Yes, Free Palestine. Super appreciate that. Let's scroll back up. And thank you, John, for being a regular. I still need to think of terms for a sandbox. You know, being a regular person in the sandbox. Like, what would you do? Like, I don't know, like player? That doesn't really work in a sandbox. Participant? Participant, yeah. Let's see. John Martinez says, pager comments, I could easily mention smallpox blankets and crusades and fascism, but then I'd get criticized. We have seen a massive spike in anti-Semitic, never mind the Palestinians are Semitic peoples as well. Shake my head. Yeah. It's funny how a conservative or probably a liberal can just get away with very casual racism like that. But, try to mention it in any other way, like when Justin Trudeau tried to call out the homophobia, suddenly he's the one getting chastised. But like I said, I'm going to be trying to fill in the void of the surfs not streaming this week. So tomorrow I'm going to be doing a live stream early because I have a lot to cover. And I don't think I'm going to cover everything I want to today because I do want to be out of here about 7 p.m. Just to unwind. I got good news and I need to unwind from it. But, something that has been sitting over my head for years about my housing situation has been cleared up and it's in my favor. So my housing situation is secure and it's still sinking in. It's still sinking in, and I'm just how grateful I am for this, for what I got. Let's see. Bad Lefty saying, I think the IOF unalived 2 Canadians already. They have a Canadian couple that was trying to flee the situation. They were stuck in traffic. Funny how the people who were trying to flee the situation, stuck in traffic, were somehow bombed. Huh. It's not like Israel can't target their weapons. It's not like they don't have a history of doing that exact thing of like, oh yeah, everyone go flee. And then they target the routes that they told everyone to flee. It's horrible. Like just so blatantly horrible and genocidal what they're doing, but they get away with it. Because, Canada and the USA back them up. But there was that speech at the UN when Netanyahu was there and not getting arrested, where you saw so many other world leaders just walk out of the room. So, sometimes it feels like so many nations are supporting Israel and what they're doing when really it's just a handful. Unfortunately, the handful happen to be some of the most powerful nations on the earth. But far, far more nations out there are also horrified and disgusted and want it to stop. John Martinez says, you are welcome. I always stand with the press given my people suffered a genocide that's ongoing since 1492. And for people who want to learn more about the genocides that have happened here, I did a very long stream on Monday talking about Orange Shirt Day, or the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, where I talked in great detail about residential schools. And I'm going to be touching just briefly on that again, some follow-up of genocide deniers here in Canada. Not shocking. I wish it was. See, if I want to get out of here at 7, it means I have to stop looking at the sandbox, but I love interacting with people. Lady Badass. Sandy, maybe the troops were sent to take out Netanyahu. I heard the sarcasm in there. Bad Lefty, life-saving, that's a 3-figure number for me, and not a high one at that. Yeah, a lot of people won't be able to afford those limited tickets. Let's see. Lots of chit-chatting going on, which is good. Hello, Shemagli. Welcome to the Sandbox. Did I mention Bad Lefty? Many doctors. Lots of people. Let's see. Trying to see a comment where I know the context that's not part of the conversation. Hello, Genie Bottle. Imagine a boxing match where the ref says, "We want a fair fight. Israel can hit you, but you cannot hit Israel." Ding ding. Yeah. It's pretty much what's happening. And then as soon as you do hit, they get really offended that you would dare do that in a boxing match. Actually, there was a very prime example of that in the Olympics. Someone upset that they got hit in the face really hard. It's boxing. Okay. Oh, Alex Zoot. Hi, Sandy. Congrats on your incredible news. I love watching you and your content. Sending all the warm fuzzies, cat hair included. Why, thank you. Yeah, I'm just... Oh, yeah, it is such a relief, the news about my housing situation, that it's still sinking in. Yeah.
This person is claiming that residential schools weren't a genocide.
Anyway,
this person is exercising genocide denialism. And if you don't believe that residential schools were a genocide, what is your definition of a genocide?
Residential school denialism.
This is the definition used by the United Nations.
So
killing members of the group,
good, quick video here
causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group,
someone whose content I am now
deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part.
I will attempt to actually connect with him.
That's literally what reservations were.
You know, at least let him know how much I love his content.
That's what they were created for. Imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group,
which is probably why,
like, say, forced sterilizations, which happened. And forcibly transferring children of the group to another group, which is exactly what residential schools were.
Only when the algorithms are kind do you actually come across other Canadian content creators.
That is a genocide, plain and simple.
It makes me wonder,
you are denying genocide. If you don't think it was genocide,
Canadian
offer a different definition of what a
genocide
is. We'll all wait.
And then, like me, how many other people looking for Canadian content
cares about whether or not residential schools were
leftist content like me,
because
the algorithms just don't serve it up.
Do you think that makes you the good person?
Fortunately, I found him through
this is the thing to quibble over? But also, speech is curtailed all the time. If you don't think your speech is curtailed, say a few slurs. We'll all be listening. But you won't, because your speech is curtailed.
You know, residential schools were
genocide,
not up for debate.
As is genocide denial.
Oh crap, that audio was going. Hopefully you guys could actually hear what I was saying over top of that. Darn it. Stupid Twitter just doing things without me wanting it. So I will try to be more careful with that in the future. That's the problem with having to use the earphones too. So hopefully you guys heard all the praise that I was laying on Steve Boots and how valuable his content is and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So anyway, I was saying, I'm grateful that I got served up Steve Boots in the algorithms because he does an amazing job of breaking down information, partly probably because he's a teacher from Saskatchewan. And it's just great when, you know, you find out about other amazing Canadian content creators. And the thing is, too, sometimes those channels, they're not exactly small. Like, he has 17,000 subscribers, over 17,000 subscribers. So, you know, it just makes me wonder, like, how many other amazing Canadian content creators are out there that we just don't know about. And because I want to share it, I want people to know about other content creators, especially ones that do a great job of just giving it out in digestible bites. Like, I've talked about, like, the definition of genocide and why what happened in Canada has been and is a genocide. And it took me like a half hour to do it. He does it in like a couple minutes. So why don't we actually get to that? And you guys won't hear me talking over him.
This person is claiming that residential schools weren't a genocide. They were. This person is exercising genocide denialism. And if you don't believe that residential schools were a genocide, what is your definition of a genocide? Because this is the definition used by the United Nations. Killing members of the group, which happened. Causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, which happened. Deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. That happened. That's literally what reservations were. That's what residential schools were. That's what they were created for. Imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, like, say, forced sterilizations, which happened. And forcibly transferring children of the group to another group, which is exactly what residential schools were. The RCMP was used to physically remove children from their families. That is a genocide, plain and simple. You are denying genocide. If you don't think it was genocide, offer a different definition of what a genocide is.
Now, one thing that, should be mentioned is, like, in Canada, Justin Trudeau has acknowledged, there's been a cultural genocide, that's what the residential schools were. And they refer to it as a cultural genocide. And there is an actual reason why they do that. And that's because when you just say it's a cultural genocide, apparently it's not the same as a genocide. Because if it's an actual genocide, then the Geneva Convention can get after you, all that sort of stuff. But when it's a cultural genocide, it doesn't fall under that category. And so you can't be held accountable the same way. And even when Canada signed on to a lot of the things of, holding nations accountable for genocide and all that sort of stuff, they put a time limit on it, only things since 2010. Canada doesn't take it seriously at all.
We'll all wait. I also want you to think about how you decided to spend your morning. Who cares about whether or not residential schools were a genocide? Do you think that makes you the good guy? Do you think that makes you the good person? Do you think this is the thing to quibble over? But also, speech is curtailed all the time. If you don't think your speech is curtailed, say a few slurs. We'll all be listening. But you won't because your speech is curtailed. Speech is illegal in Canada. Very straightforward. As is genocide denialism.
And part of the reason why Leah Gazan has a bill up in Parliament right now to include residential school denialism as basically genocide denialism. So, as I explained in my video that I did about all of this, she's not trying to add like a new category. She's just trying to include residential school denialism under the umbrella of genocide denialism. It's kind of like, when the right wing got all up in an uproar that here in Canada, oh no, my freedom of speech is being taken away because if you refer to somebody by a different pronoun than what they prefer or something like that, oh no, you're going to be jailed and all this sort of stuff. And it wasn't that a new law was made, it was just that gender diverse people and pronouns and stuff, that was just then included under the umbrella of, protected people. That's all. It's not like a new category was suddenly made. And so, like, if you just casually accidentally misgender someone, you're not going to get in trouble. But if you publicly, purposely misgender people, then you can actually get in trouble here in Canada because that falls under hate speech now. And so this is a very famous painting that was done up. Ken Monkman Cree, and it's called The Scream. And it is just, a very brutal image of, what actually happened in this country. But you can see here, like, the children in the background trying to run away, and their stories of, they would have signals on reservations that as soon as they saw one of the Mounties coming in, they would do a signal of some sort of an audio signal, like clamming pods, a certain call out or something, which would tell the children to go run into the bushes because the RCMP were going there to kidnap children. And sometimes they went there for specific children that they knew of, but if those children weren't available to kidnap, then they would just grab whatever children. And so there were actual, alerts and stuff that they would call out to tell the children, go run into the bushes and hide. And yeah, it's a very disturbing image, but it's very real image, because this is what happened. And this was just tweeted out by somebody saying, Kristen, I think it's important for Americans to understand that Canada is not some utopia where people are magically not Nazis. This Canadian woman with a hairdresser who hates her is casually participating in genocide denialism. I guess somebody got in trouble. Yes, I did block that account. But here it is. When you don't click on it, you can still see it. And she says, if I ever don an orange shirt, it'll be this one. And she was actually replying to somebody else that was participating in genocide denialism. When I clicked on it, which I can't show you anymore because, yeah. Somebody got in trouble. Good. And then the Serfs had tweeted this out. This dude is a teacher who got fired for trying to teach residential school denialism, and rather than learn from thousands of testimonies of survivors, decided he'd turn it into a personality. And, you know, this is why Leah Gazan's bill is so important, because some people on the right see this denialism as just like a new thing that they can make money from, that they can get attention from. And sadly, it works. You know, they do get a lot of other support from other right-wingers, money. You know, it's easy to come across right-wing channels on YouTube because that's where the clicks go. But like I was saying, when it came to finding out about Steve Boots, trying to find leftist content creators on YouTube is very difficult. On the right, very easy. And they get monetized and they get attention and they get a lot of what they want. And so a lot of people like to just embrace it, like this horrendous person, Jim McMurdy, who, again, this used to be a teacher. Yeah, there are no bodies, but a donut is a donut. And he's wearing a t-shirt that says, where are the bodies? While holding up an orange donut. Again, and this orange donut was a performative thing from Tim Hortons for Orange Shirt Day. And, you know, I don't necessarily knock Tim Hortons for doing that. They do that for everything, where they'll change the color of the sprinkles on the donut for different occasions and stuff like that. But just like the gall of him, and to think that this person was teaching. Like, how much hate in your heart do you have to dismiss the children? Like, the children he was teaching, had they been born in a different generation, if they had been born Indigenous in a different generation, would have been at these residential schools. Those children he was teaching. And yet he's denying the horrors of residential schools. Like, what kind of evil do you have to be walking around with to spew such hatred? And then reconciliation. Your father literally sent soldiers and tanks to bust up the Oka protests. And this is from Amir Ataran. And he's quote tweeting Caroline Mulroney. Now, Brian Mulroney used to be Prime Minister of Canada. And I have a video on this. The Oka crisis. It's about 6 months ago. If you go back, if you go to the search. Here, why don't I do this for people? I'll go here and then I'll do this. And I'll go to my YouTube page. So you guys can see what I am talking about. There we go. So if you go to my YouTube page and under the search bar, just type in OKA, Oka, you'll come by Remembering Brian Mulroney, the Oka crisis. So I this was part of my live stream. I've been doing them for a year now. When Brian Mulroney died, I'm good. He was a Prime Minister of Canada, horrible person. And yeah, the Oka crisis was quite the thing. And oddly, the media wasn't really talking about that when Brian Mulroney died. They were talking a lot about, like, oh, the good he was and all this, and he was Prime Minister and all that sort of bullshit that they tend to do with people once they die. But they weren't mentioning the Oka crisis, which is a big part of his legacy. And so if you haven't seen it, I recommend that you go back and watch it because it's very informative. It's part of Canada's history and it's rarely ever talked about. But again, the thing is again, when I talk about these issues, it's not a performative thing for me. It's because I care and I want justice and I want people to know what Canada really is and the way it has and continues to treat Indigenous peoples in this country needs to be called out. And so I did the special on Monday for Orange Shirt Day, but I'm throughout the year I cover issues around Indigenous peoples because I feel it's important to be part of the narrative because Canada is a horrendously racist country, especially towards Indigenous peoples, and it needs to be called out. So Caroline Mulroney, she is performative with this because you think she would ever say anything about the Oka crisis even though her father was responsible for it? Today, on the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, we honor the survivors of Indian residential school system and remember those who never made it home. Indigenous voices continue to guide us on our collective journey towards lasting reconciliation. You don't tend to listen to those voices, do you? And this is like part of the performative bullshit I hate around subjects like this that you see from politicians in particular. Or corporations, like, wanting to get in on it as some sort of marketing ploy. Like I said, Canada's culture is capitalism. And if they can see a way of marketing it, putting it in a nice little presentable bowl and making it sellable, that's what they'll do. And so this, like, just wearing an orange shirt performatively does nothing to change the system, does nothing to go towards reconciliation. Just putting on an orange shirt once a year, tweeting out a picture does nothing to help what is still happening. And then not only is there's this performative BS going on, but truth and reconciliation needs to be taken seriously in this country. So do you know what happened recently here? Abundance of caution. TDS Toronto District School Board cancels Truth and Reconciliation Day field trips. And I covered why, and I clipped it just recently because recently a field trip went to a Grassy Narrows rally, and Grassy Narrows has been dealing with contaminated water, mercury contaminated water, for generations. And they have gone to court to sue both the province and the federal government. And so they were having a rally and a field trip from the school board went there. And a protest broke out because among the people rallying were also supporters of Palestinians. And they were wearing keffiyehs and they were chanting in support of Palestinians and stuff like that because, it was just so unforeseeable for these teachers to understand that Indigenous people here might be supportive of Indigenous people in other places. Didn't see that coming, apparently. And so now, instead of doing part of the reconciliation thing of teaching children about, reconciliation by having these important field trips, by exposing them to the truth at a nice young age, they canceled it because they're worried they might find out about a genocide that's currently going on. Of course, that's not how they phrase it. They're worried, like they try to frame it as in, oh no, the little Jewish kids might feel uncomfortable. That's how they try to frame it. as opposed to, oh no, they might find out about the genocide that's happening in Gaza.
Well, the Toronto District School Board canceled a field trip to the National Truth and Reconciliation Ceremony at Nathan Phillips Square. The TDSB says students from approximately 6 schools were set to attend yesterday's event. It says the decision was made to cancel the field trip because staff and organizers couldn't provide assurances that it would not become a site for a political protest, march, or rally. A statement from the TDSB reads in part, this was done out of an abundance of caution a little over a week after protests that were witnessed during the field trip to the Grassy Narrows River Run and the resulting investigation by the Ministry of Education. Across the TDSB, our 582 schools marked the day in a variety of ways, including through assemblies, activities, and class discussions.
Not the same as actually going to these rallies and hearing stories directly from Indigenous peoples. Some of them survivors of these residential schools, you know, because they're just so worried the kids might see a kafia. Toronto's Public School Board canceled approximately 6 planned field trips to Nathan Phillips Square for National Truth and Reconciliation Day amid concerns about the potential for protest. I don't think we need to go much more into that because I covered what happened at Grassy Narrows and the fact that the Grassy Narrow rally and the fact that they've decided to launch an investigation into that. Doug Ford also sent out statements to the school boards telling them to be cautious about what they teach approaching the 1-year anniversary of October 7th. That basically he was warning people that there would be like eyes and ears in the classroom to make sure that you don't make that talk political if you decide to have it. Absolutely horrendous. Like, they're again just still willing to like totally go against truth and reconciliation here to help deny the genocide that's happening in the country. Like, I really want to say I'm shocked. I do, but I'm not. Let's see. I don't think I need to go any more into that. But again, it's not just a past tense when you talk about the genocides that happened here in Canada. It's ongoing. And Nikki Ashton is also an NDP MP who's really outspoken on these issues. And this is why it's so much more important that reconciliation just not be performative, that you don't just see these politicians don an orange shirt and wipe their hands of, you know, doing their part, because there are things ongoing that need to be addressed. And she talks about it. So she's an MP, I believe, from Winnipeg.
We all know that the crisis of...
Don't start without me starting you. Northern Millennium. That she's an MP for, I believe she's in Manitoba, but she was speaking due to the lack of, oh, why don't I just do that? It's good to know who your politicians are. Churchill and Kiiwetinook. ASCII. And this is what she had to say. The First Nations housing crisis is connected to the lack of clean drinking water due to the lack of infrastructures in communities like Garden Hill and Shamawata. Drinking water often arrives contaminated. Why don't the Liberals make good on their promises to First Nations? Something a lot of Canadians don't realize is the reserves are under federal jurisdiction. It's the federal government's responsibility to make sure the infrastructure is up to code, to make sure that they have housing and clean water and all of that sort of stuff, because these reserves are still on what the federal government has claimed as their land. And so let's listen to what she has to say on this.
It often, we all know that the crisis of clean drinking water is directly related to the housing crisis on First Nations. It recently came out that on housing, that the federal government has shortchanged First Nations in the prairie provinces by a total of $250 million. The Prime Minister and his cabinet have fundamentally ruled out reimbursing First Nations in the prairie provinces from whom they stole that money. In my riding, communities like Garden Hill and Island Lake First Nations, remote First Nations, face some of the worst housing, one of the most acute housing crises in the country. And we know that for a community like Garden Hill, the lack of proper housing has meant that by the time water gets to them, it often becomes contaminated. I imagine there are similar connections in communities across your region. The lack of climate-resistant infrastructure is also a real problem when we're talking about water treatment plants, water systems, etc. I know that this makes it clear that resolving the clean drinking water issue means resolving the housing crisis.
So the infrastructure is all the federal government's responsibility, which they have been neglecting purposely. And, you know, you have houses that are falling apart, full of mold, don't keep up with the populations growing in these communities, none of that. And like some of these places are toxic, like they have sewer backups and things of that sort. And they don't do well in the climates that are there. And so a lot of people are suffering in these communities when the federal government should be stepping up and providing, you know, safe, clean housing, safe, clean water, like all of their needs. Like this is the thing. Canada should just be doing whatever it takes at this point. Just whatever Indigenous peoples need, this government should just give it to them. No questions asked. But instead, they're constantly fighting it. They're constantly pushing back. They're constantly taking Indigenous peoples to court to fight. And it's just, no, just anything they want, this government should be giving it to them. But she was speaking more about the clean water issue. And so she spoke again in government. And just a lot of political theater coming from the Liberal side. So she says, Liberal hired lawyers fighting Shamatawan in court argued First Nations don't have a right to clean water, and any minister saying otherwise is just political theater. Minister Hadju may find my words heartening, but her lawyers are clear how they really feel. Shame on Liberals. So when you have Indigenous communities suing the government and stuff to try to get clean water, when the government gets lawyers to fight against them, what exactly are those Liberal government doing? Like, so then they're saying, no, you don't have a right to clean water because we have lawyers that are going to try to fight you on this issue, as opposed to, you know, just making sure you have clean water.
Mr. Speaker, Liberals spent yesterday professing support for First Nations, the same First Nations the government is currently fighting in court over something as basic as clean drinking water. Canada's lawyers are saying that, quote, Canada doesn't know any legal obligations or duties to operate First Nations water systems. They even say that when ministers make promises, it's just, quote, context specific and can be ignored. This is the Liberal approach to reconciliation. Promise clean drinking water to First Nations and then direct your lawyers to fight First Nations in court on clean drinking water. Will the Liberals cut the hypocrisy, stop fighting Shamattawa and other First Nations in court, and deliver clean drinking water once and for all?
Mr. Speaker, it's really heartening to hear the Member of Parliament from the NDP.
And that's just, it's gross to hear it that way. You know, oh, it's really heartening to hear her speak that way. You know, it fills my heart. It's heartening to hear somebody speak so passionately about the lack of clean drinking water. Disgusting.
Speak so eloquently about the need to move quicker and faster on alleviating long-term boil water advisories across this country. In fact, since we've taken office, we've lifted over 145 long-term boil water advisories, prevented well over 200, Mr. Speaker.
You see, they like to applaud and look at that, but what they tend to not mention when they mention how many they've lifted is how many were enacted during that time. If you include the amount of water advisories that were put in place during that time, the number is not that impressive. And Justin Trudeau promised once upon a time to get rid of all of the advisories, and there's zero excuse in a country like Canada, with the resources we have, with the amount of drinkable water this country has. You know, we can put pipelines across the country for oil, but but somehow we can't for clean water. Like, it is just so disgusting, their stance, but how they love to pat their backs with, saying, oh, well, we got rid of these ones. Not good enough. It's not good enough.
And we're going to continue that hard work. I assume from her comments that means she's going to support this new legislation and ensure it has safe passage through the House.
How condescending is that? Oh, well, since she seems to care about it, I'm sure she's going to vote with us. Hee Just... I wish, I just wish this segment within the NDP would break away from their party and make their own party, or just take over the party from within. Because if we had people like Nikki Ashton, Leah Gazan, Matthew Green actually stepping up and running the NDP, that would be a party, worth engaging with, worth being energized over, because they are amazing MPs doing what, the base of the NDP wants, which is the more progressive thing. And just the Liberals' just snobbish attitude, the arrogance in them, it's so disgusting, and it just oozes out of them all the fucking time. Every time Justin Trudeau says Israel has a right to defend itself, every time they pat themselves on the back for doing a half-ass measure, or for, doing half a promise or something of that sort, it's disgusting that it's like, oh, well, the thing is that the polling is showing that the NDP is actually pulling ahead of the Liberals. So, come this next election, when the Liberals always love to say, vote strategically, I hope they say that again, only this time, vote for the NDP if you want to vote strategically. But I also just had a couple more short videos from Steve Boots. Again, just talking about, he does a really good job of just breaking down the hate speech laws here in Canada and how they actually apply. Because, again, so many people seem to think we have freedom of speech in Canada. We do not. We have freedom of expression. And he does a great job of just breaking them down into these nice little nuggets of information. And more Canadians need to hear this, because so many just get confused as to what it actually means. And so here he's also talking about the bill from Leah Gazan about including residential schools into the hate speech law. And then he has a little breakdown of what it is. And so they're both really quick, and I love his content, and everyone should go follow him, subscribe to his channel, all that sort of stuff. He has a YouTube channel. I think he's more popular on Twitch. I'm not on Twitch, rarely ever. So, but just amazing content. Everyone should be following him.
I want to take a second to talk about a bill that's been brought forward by this MP, Leah Gazan from the NDP. Because yesterday was the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and if you were online like I was, you saw a lot of residential school denialism. It is a huge problem. And so Leah Gazan has brought forward a bill that would criminalize residential school denialism. I want to take some time to look at the bill, because it's quite short and it's quite important. So the bill specifically seeks to, quote, create an offense of willfully promoting hatred against Indigenous peoples by condoning, denying, downplaying, or justifying the Indian residential school system in Canada through statements communicated other than in private conversation. So you cannot publicly engage in residential school denialism. At least that's the idea. Specifically, it is about communicating statements other than in private conversation which willfully promote hatred against Indigenous peoples. Willful is important here. By condoning, denying, downplaying, or justifying the Indian residential school system in Canada, or misrepresenting facts relating to it.
See, the thing is that a lot of right-wingers get up in arms about this, but this isn't talking about people who have casual conversations in the bar, who have private conversations at home. Like, you literally have to be going out of your way, find a public platform to spew this nonsense in order for it to be any chance of it being a risk to you. Like, it's not something where you have to be watching over your shoulder at any given time, worried about the words that are coming out of your mouth. Nothing like that. Like, you have to put effort into it in order for it to be considered hate speech.
Now, to be clear, there are defenses built into the bill here. If you establish that your statements are true, you're fine. If you are acting in good faith or attempted to establish by an argument an opinion on religious subject or an opinion based in a religious text, if the statements were relevant to public interest, or if the statements are made in good faith, seeking understanding. So here's the thing. If you actually have evidence to support what you want to say about residential schools, you're fine here. If you can establish that what you were saying is true, you're okay. So anybody concerned about this is really just concerned about losing their ability to lie about residential schools. And if you're going to come on here and say, well, what if they don't know the truth? Then don't announce something wrong. If you don't know the truth, you have a responsibility to educate yourself rather than repeating lies. Frankly, I think this is a perfectly reasonable bill. If you can explain to me how residential school denialism is anything other than hate speech, I'd love to hear it, but it's hate speech. Pretty plain and simple.
And he got a lot of pushback from right-wingers on that. And so he actually, again, had to explain the hate speech laws here because so many right-wingers seem to think we're Americans and we don't have free speech. And so he had to release this in response because people just did not understand what he was saying.
You don't have freedom of speech in Canada. You have freedom of expression. We've done this so many times. And your freedom of expression has many limitations on it. If you don't believe that, make a libelous claim about a stranger. Just make up a lie. Free from consequence, obviously. Or how about some hate speech? Go on TV, loudly declare some slurs. Sure, the CRTC would have some words with you. Speech in Canada is regulated all the time. There are things that we as a society have determined are simply unacceptable, like lying about other people. Or hate speech. Like, if you think that hate speech is perfectly legal in Canada, feel free to share some in the comment section. We'll pass your IP along to the RCMP, obviously. Free speech is abridged in Canada all the time, because you don't have it. You have freedom of expression. And that brings with it restrictions and responsibilities. They're built right into the act. You don't live in America. Probably. Based on my demographics, like 10% of you do, but you don't.
Most of my demographics are American, so this is good information for you to know that if you come up to Canada, you don't have free speech. And the thing is that I'm good with that. You know, the Americans' idea of free speech and what that does and what that means, I actually like having certain restrictions on hate speech and stuff like that. Like, I don't think people should just be allowed to go around and make up lies about others. Like, I do think there should be restrictions on it. And I feel the ones here in Canada are fairly well balanced, you know? Because, yeah, we have the freedom of expression. We're not being, like, tracked in our own private homes about what we say. But if you publicly want to say a lie, like a blatant lie, deny genocide, spew hate speech, yeah, you're going to get in trouble. I'm okay with that. Anyway, let's check the Sandbox. And then I'm going to get on to the LGBTQ news. It's already 6:30. I was hoping to be done by 7. Oh well, I won't be done by 7. Because this is in the headlines, so I want to get to it. Or in the title of my video, so I definitely do want to get to it. And there is a video from Danielle Smith announcing this bullshit, which I'll probably end up yammering on about. But first, check the Sandbox. All I have to do is go back to when people were yelling at me that the audio was playing. There we go. Hello, anti-corporatist. Let's see. Yes, a reminder from Looney Tunes 9000 to turn top chat off. You want live stream or live chat to actually see everyone's comments. It's very annoying that it doesn't default to that. John Martinez, fascists believe hate speech is free speech. You can use that speech. But if you But if I deck you for using it, that's my freedom to respond to violent words. Yeah, not free of consequences. Genie bottle. It's sad and funny how some folk say the country is being overrun by foreigners while living in Canada, USA, Australia, New Zealand. Yeah. And John Martinez following up on that, I think, just saying you can't colonize countries and murder their people, steal their lands and resources, and cry about foreigners. Yeah. Like, I've even seen, like, the amount of settlers here who have told Indigenous people to go back to their country because they can't figure things out. It's like, oh. So Life says they don't remember how they found out about my channel. No, I'm glad you did. A lot of crossover in the sandboxes of other leftist content creators, in the chats of other content creators, leftist content creators. So it's possible you heard about that there. Or I've gotten a lot of people subscribing to my channel when I call into the Majority Report. But it's hard to, you know, break through the algorithms. And, you know, when I watch like American leftist content creators like Majority Report or others that have larger platforms, they tend to bug them about more Canadian news because a lot of Canadians tend to be more left-leaning than a lot of Americans, and they want that content and they want to see it. And so it's just frustrating to me when I see them like I am or call into a show asking for this, and meanwhile I'm like, I covered it, like literally I covered what you are asking for. I am getting a private number calling in, which I don't answer. Looney Tunes 9000 says I found Sandy after I left UIT. I get a lot of calls right around now about private numbers or numbers I don't know. I know who it is. It's the NDP calling me for donations. Because once you're on that list, no matter what, you can't get off of it. Despite everything that they put me through. I support individuals within the NDP. I do not support the NDP, especially after what they did to me. Tom Trask. Don't know if I've seen you in the Sandbox before. Welcome. And you're giving a shout out to Schmegley. Sorry, I'm 27 minutes behind, and that's nice. Host mentioned your name. I do respond to people in the Sandbox. Grand Theft Autobot, from what I can tell, Bill C-63 revolves around the mandatory reporting of internet child porn by persons provide an internet service. If they think that impedes free speech, then yikes. Are you talking about a Canadian bill? Because I know there's some issues around some bills that they want to censor online content, and they quite often will use the guise of for protecting the children, and I do agree that you should, but it could also censor a lot of other people. It's, you know, we need to really revamp and look at how we do laws and censoring and monitoring, because the governments and the legislation simply have not caught up with technology. And there needs to be a better look at it, because something needs to happen to make sure that children are safe from that sort of content. But at the same time, you know, you don't want to just take away the rights of adults, because some of them is like you would have to give your government ID in order to log on to an adult website. So it's a very sticky situation. Like, there needs to be better checks and balances somehow. Let's see. Shemagli, Israel has a right to consequences for its actions. Like, it's so frustrating. Like, all of that, because the people who will end up suffering in the end, generally speaking, are people who aren't involved with the actual fighting part. It's just civilians. Like, I don't want to see Israel bombed because civilians will get killed. But I absolutely understand why they're going to. Like, when nations decide to just go to war, invade other countries, you know, they never worry about their own skin, because it's never the people at the top that suffer the consequences. It's the people at the bottom, and they don't care about the people at the bottom. So they're fine doing whatever. And it's the people who have no control, who have no say, that are the ones, like in Lebanon, the citizens that are just told to hop on a flight and get out of harm's way. You know, they're not the ones who are involved with Hezbollah. They're not the ones that are trying to do any harm. They just want to live their lives. But it's the citizens, it's the innocent people who are always the victims of these aggressions towards each other, because, you know, Netanyahu has a warrant out for his arrest, yet could go and speak at the UN without any consequence. They're not the ones that will suffer. It's the innocent people who will suffer. Like, yeah, I just wish I could Thanos snap world peace. Grand Theft Autobot, he owns the toque, unless Tim fucking Boole. Yeah, it's interesting, because from what I've seen of Steve Boots, he's always wearing a toque. And here we get to call it a toque. And I want to reach out and see if we can connect, because I love his content. But I need to know, does his middle name start with an A? Because then his name would be Steve Boot. Some of you Canadians are going to get that. Shemagli, people are so worried they might not be able to say too openly racist towards Indigenous people. That's what they're worried about. John Martinez, short and to the point. If you deny, I can't respect you. Love this bill. Right-wingers who get angry over this are racist who want us all dead. Yeah, if you're upset over the bill that Leah Gazan is trying to put through, then I don't want you in my life. Like, if you're upset about that, don't follow me, don't subscribe to me. Just go back under the rock you crawled out from. John Martinez, someone told me to go back to my country, so I built a teepee in his backyard. From a quote from somebody who's anonymous. Sounds about right. Grand Theft Autobot says, I first saw Sandy on TYT Rebel HQ. Followed here. Even though I wasn't allowed to promote my channel when I was doing videos for them, I couldn't shout out my YouTube channel. Grand Theft Autobot, I was talking about right-wing nut channel called MCGA that was YouTube fed me, warning about Canadians will get locked up for life for free under life for free speech under Bill C-63. They do love to fearmonger about it. Seth Evans, yeah, logging into adult website is usually a stick situation. Couldn't resist. Yes, yeah, it's funny. It is a very tricky situation on how to balance, making sure kids don't come across adult material, but still allowing the adults freedom to search out that material. But then it's also what is considered adult material, because that's where a lot of governments, especially in the States, will want to classify anything LGBTQ plus as adult content. So suddenly now you're getting monitored if you're going there, or you have to have some sort of ID to go on information sites to just learn more about, who you are and things of that sort. Like, it's just, yeah, more needs to be done to protect children, and more needs to be done to make sure that adults still have the freedom to be adults and do legal things. But also from Grand Theft Auto Bob, Bill C-63 also has amendments adding to hate speech laws. Yeah, I don't know too much about it. Okay. Mindy Doctors, Iran was quite measured. They attacked a military target with open spaces at night. They demonstrated to Israel and US they could attack civilian targets and cut through missile defenses like a knife. I'm glad they hit just the military targets, but it's just, you see it over and over again where they're the ones showing restraint. Like when Soleimani was assassinated by the United States, it was, the nations in the Middle East that kept restrained when they had every right to strike back at that point. Like, at what point do they just not? And I don't want them to be pushed that far, because I just want it to be stopped. But you can't expect them to just lie down and keep on getting hit over and over and over again and not do anything to actually defend themselves. And in their case, it is, they have a right to defend themselves. Jeannie Bottle, whoever said words don't hurt, never had words of hate told to them. It is meaning in words to, are they mean to who or why? Yes, hate speech, it's abuse, like verbal abuse. And depending on the person, can hurt so much more. And yeah, I think there should be hate speech laws. Oh. Lady Badass, if I'm classified as porn, I'm totally monetizing my ass. Literally. Like, would having these flags up make me adult content? Anyway, why don't we actually get back to it so I don't spend so much time. I wanted to be done by 7, but I still have to get through the LGBTQ plus stuff that I wanted to get to, and this is going to take a bit because Danielle Smith is horrible. So for those of you who are newish to the channel and don't know who Danielle Smith is, sorry to be the one to have to inform you, she exists. She is the Conservative Premier of Alberta, and it feels like the Conservative leaders of the provinces are really trying to become the Baron of the Barrel, as I've recently stated, where they're trying to, instead of being king of the castle, they're trying to dominate the bottom of the barrel. And so I refer to them as wanting to be the Baron of the Barrel. What Alberta, Danielle Smith, is doing right now is so devastating and will cost lives of the most vulnerable people in that province. Let's get into it. as I play with my headphones as we do this, and then I get them all tangled up. So the serfs tweeted out she destroyed the public healthcare system. She has slashed the fire response team, leading to forest fires so bad she had to beg federal government for help. Non-stop water droughts from infrastructure mismanagement. But sure, it's the trans kids that are ruining everything. And so this is a statement that she tweeted out in a video. And she says, in less than a month, our UCP government will introduce critical legislation to ensure that children wait until adulthood before making decisions to physically alter their bodies for gender transition. We will also strengthen parental rights. Parents don't have rights, they have responsibilities within our education system regarding this issue and ensure that women and girls can compete in female-only sports divisions. Trans women are women, trans girls are girls. Like, how is she not being charged with hate speech? It kind of blows my mind that she can do all of this. And under Canada's hate speech laws, she's not nailed for it. Like, it's just, come on. While these are sensitive topics, our government believes these measures are in the best interests of children. And we will proceed with these changes without delay. As this legislation is debated, we invite all Albertans to join the conversation. Regardless of differing opinions, we must ensure that all children identifying as transgender know they are cared for and supported. Oh, yeah, that's a bunch of bullshit from her. So if you're in Alberta, please join that conversation. Call into her office, email her, mail her. Get some signs ready for protests. Be prepared to protest. Because this legislation that she is proposing is devastating, horrible, horrendous, and is the polar opposite of care. So this video is 6 minutes long, and I'm going to yap a lot through it, so hence why I don't think I'll be done by 7.
My fellow Albertans, I wish to speak with you about an issue that is deeply personal and sensitive to so many: the journey of children and youth in our province who identify as transgender and who are struggling with gender dysphoria. As you may know, after announcing our government's new policy direction on these issues earlier this year, we engaged in extensive consultations with parents, educators, healthcare professionals, sporting organizations, and members of the transgender community.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Especially that last part there, the transgender community. They did not. No. No, they didn't. Did not. And we'll get a little bit more into that after this video.
We are now prepared to introduce the legislation implementing these new policies, and we'll do so when the legislature is back in session. I want Albertans to know what to expect to see in that proposed legislation. But first, I would like to say a few words to those most affected by it. I know
if only people could read between the lines. The people most affected by it. She's basically saying, I hate you and hope you don't. I can't see that for sure, but that's kind of the feeling I get.
These are complex and often deeply emotional topics. As someone who personally understands the profound impact and challenges these issues can cause children and their families.
How do you personally know that? How? How do you personally know that, Danielle?
I want to make it clear that our government is here to support and uplift every child and every family of a child who identifies as transgender or who is struggling with gender dysphoria.
Again, just to go back to the serf's point, there's so much happening in Alberta right now, like with their crumbling healthcare system, with, you know, the environment issues, with the worker issue. Like, there's so much. And she's devoting so much of her energy and time and resources to targeting a tiny, tiny portion of the population that is already vulnerable and struggling in a very conservative right-wing province. Like, to just go out of her way so much to single out these children And they're the ones that always want to talk about keeping the children safe. What she's doing actively harms trans children.
And more specifically to those children and youth, I want you to know that you are loved. I care deeply about each of you, and you are valued as much as anyone else in our province and in our communities.
Politicians should not be allowed to lie in their promotional campaign material. Or just promotional material. This isn't a campaign, but politicians should not be allowed to lie to the public.
I am absolutely committed to ensuring that you receive the support you and your family may need during this critical time of growth and self-discovery.
Like, she says this too, like, sorry, this video really pisses me off, and I've already seen it. Like, she's telling them, we care and we love for you, but then she gets into all the ways that this legislation will harm them, but tries to spin it that we do this because we care about you. Like, this is abusive. Like, it is so abusive, the way that she frames this. Of, we care and love for you, but we're going to deny your existence and not help and support you, but we're doing it because we love you.
I also want you to know that I and those who serve with me in our government are bringing in these new rules for only one purpose. We believe it's vitally important to preserve the time you have as a youth to gain sufficient amount of knowledge, experience, and perspective so that you can fully understand who you are, who you want to be, and what opportunities you may want to have as an adult before making permanent life-altering decisions related to your body.
Do you know what makes permanent alterations to a person's body? Puberty. Yeah, it makes permanent changes to a person's body, which is why it's so important for trans children to be able to undergo the puberty that suits their gender. Because once they've gone through puberty, once they're forced to go through a puberty that doesn't conform to the gender that they are, it's so much more difficult to transition. Whereas if they get to transition from the get-go, they're not faced with the trauma of watching their body turn into a gender that they don't identify with. And, you know, the transition is just so much smoother, and the differences between cisgendered and transgendered people, for transgender children who can go through their proper puberty, it's so minuscule, the actual biological differences. Like, it's so sad that she wants to deny children the opportunity to be who they are while trying to tell them, we're doing this because we love you. We're doing this. It's in your best interest that we do this to you.
That is so very important to understand. And anyone who claims that these rules were designed to target or somehow harm you in any way are mistaken. Although questioning or disagreeing with these new policies is any person's democratic right, adults who choose to tell children and youth that these policies were designed to hurt them or marginalize them, that kind of rhetoric is irresponsible and harmful to the young people involved, and it is entirely false.
I feel like I'm in 1984 with this speak. Because she's basically saying, yeah, people have the right to argue with us, but if they do, they're lying. You know, if anyone who challenges what I say, they are lying, and they're the harmful ones. Even though I'm about to list off all these ways, all these policies and legislation I'm trying to push through that will actively harm you. But, you know, anyone who calls me out, they're the liars. But yeah, now she's going to go through the list of what they're doing. And it is harmful. It is so harmful.
I sincerely hope that we adults can debate the proposed legislation with maturity and compassion, rather than question each other's motives at the expense of the children and youth who will be listening to the debate.
Again, 1984 speak right there. You know, oh, we need to do this properly as mature adults and stuff like that. And meanwhile, they're the ones that are causing the harm. Like, it actually kind of makes me sick in the stomach how twisted her brain is on this and how she's twisting these words so much.
I'll now go over some of the specifics to expect in the legislation. Firstly, licensed Alberta doctors will be prohibited from performing gender assignment surgeries on youth under the age of 18 in Alberta.
I don't know how many more times this needs to be pointed out, but gender reassignment surgeries on youth virtually never happens. And usually the only kind that does happen is like a top surgery. But like gender reassignment surgery on youth, not a thing. It's not a thing. Like, you notice how they never quote statistics or actual cases of it? Because it doesn't happen. Like, generally speaking, the only type that does happen is for top surgery. But like, this isn't a thing. This isn't a thing. And yet she's making legislation based on something that doesn't happen.
Puberty blockers and hormone therapies for the purpose of gender reassignment for minors under the age of 16 will also be prohibited unless a minor has already commenced their treatment.
So this is where you can get into the discrimination right very plainly. When you see this right here, so hormones and puberty blockers for the purpose of gender reassignment. So basically, trans children are not being given the same level of treatment as cis children, because if cis children need puberty blockers or hormones, they're allowed. But trans children are not allowed that type of health care. That is discrimination right there. And also,
for the purpose of gender reassignment for minors under the age of 16.
Do you know what starts before the age of 16? Puberty. So you want to wait till a child has already started to undergo puberty, see their body change, and then be like, oh, now we'll give you puberty blockers. Like, this is the party of supposed common sense. And yet so many times I've heard them say, no, only people who are like 18 years or older should be allowed to use puberty blockers. Bit late then, isn't it? You know, like this idea, like, no, we want you to start going through the trauma of watching your body turn into a gender you don't identify with before we allow you to even consider puberty blockers and hormones. And at that time, you're not even doing puberty blockers. You'd be going straight into hormones, because puberty blockers, they're more just there to put the adults at ease, you know, to delay the process even more, because quite often children very, very young are already understanding what their gender is and stuff of that sort. So by the time puberty comes around, the child knows. But to put the parents and other adults at ease, they go on puberty blockers just to delay it even longer. But to wait until a child is 16 to watch their body already undergo permanent changes, again, it just, you're not helping them, you're harming them by doing this.
Will also be prohibited unless a minor has already commenced their treatment at this time. For 16 and 17-year-olds wishing to proceed with puberty blockers or other hormone therapies for the purpose of gender reassignment, they may do so only if they have parental, psychologist, and doctor approval.
Anyone want to guess how many of them don't have access to psychological doctors and family doctors that could approve this? You know, with the healthcare crisis in Alberta, where you need to get that psychological approval and you need to get family doctors' approval for this, and then you have to deal with the biases that those professionals might have with this. Any guesses?
In our schools, the proposed legislation will now require parental notification and consent for a teacher or staff member to change a child's name or pronoun and publicly use that new name or pronoun in a classroom setting or school assembly.
Now, when the Conservative premiers do this, because this has happened in a few provinces already, they're not just talking about like officially changing it on paperwork, like the school paperwork, because I could understand why a parent needs to be aware of that. They also mean, what's the word? Like just the casual use, the unofficial use. So in classroom and stuff of that sort. So, oh gosh, darn it, there's a word for it specifically. Where, oh, I almost had it. Oh my gosh, I almost had it in my head. I hate when this happens. It's when it's going to bug me. It's going to bug me. So they're talking about even just like on a casual level, unofficial level, like in the classroom, a teacher wants to respect a child's pronouns or name. And again, this is where the discrimination comes in, because if a cisgender child goes by a nickname, you don't need parental approval for that. But if a trans child wants to use a different name, suddenly you need parental approval for that. That's just discrimination right there. Yeah, I'm looking at the chat to see if anybody can read my mind and know exactly what I was trying to get at with the word that I was thinking of. Might just be unofficially. So this is very discriminatory, and to have to seek out the parents' permission for this, and it gets a little darker.
And to be clear, this does not mean reporting or outing a student for their private conversations with friends or teachers regarding their gender identity. For 16 or 17-year-olds who choose to alter their name or pronoun used in school, they may do so without parental consent, so long as parents are still notified in advance.
So, sorry, how did those sentences go?
School assembly. And to be clear, this does not mean reporting or outing a student for their private conversations with friends or teachers.
So we're not talking about outing students for their private conversations regarding their gender identity with teachers and stuff.
Regarding their gender identity. For 16 or 17-year-olds who choose to alter their name or pronoun used in school, they may do so without parental consent, so long as parents are still notified in advance.
So how exactly are you not outing the student if they don't inform their parents? You don't need official parent permission, approval, in order for a 16 or 17-year-old to make those changes. But the parent is still required to be notified of that. And it's been pointed out so many times, if a child is holding that information from their parent, there's a reason. They don't feel safe identifying like that in front of their parents. But you still want to notify their parents in these situations while trying to claim you're not outing them. So she's saying, we're not going to out you, not at all. Like, if you're 16 or 17, you don't need parental consent in order to do this, but they still need to be notified before you're allowed to do this. Does she understand that this logic makes no sense at all?
In those extremely rare circumstances where a teacher feels that a child might be at risk should the parents be notified of a desired name or pronoun change, Alberta Education will provide a protocol to ensure the protection of that child throughout the parental notification process.
So if a teacher believes that the child might be in harm if their parents were to find out about their gender identity, she says, well, we'll deal with it at the time while we tell the parent. We're still going to tell the parent, but you know, we'll put in a protocol. What kind of monster is she? Like, just the idea of like, okay, so the teacher identifies that this child is vulnerable at home, but we're still going to go through with telling the parents about their child's gender identity, but we'll put in some sort of protocol? Like, this is monstrous.
So long as parents are still notified in advance. In those extremely rare circumstances where a teacher feels that a child might be at risk should the parents be notified of a desired name or pronoun change, Alberta Education will provide a protocol to ensure the protection of that child throughout the parental notification process.
We're still going to notify the parent even if we think they'll put the child at risk. Just, wow.
I am convinced that parents, even those who may disagree with the decision of their child, will still love and care for that child no matter what choices they make.
That is not the case for everyone. And she just says, I'm convinced of that. Why? What convinces you of that? Like, if a child is not telling their parents about this, there's a reason. And most children who suffer abuse, it's from their parents. Like, I wish it was rare. But there are reasons why statistics for unhoused youth and suicide attempts and suicides are drastically higher for queer folks. It's because they don't have that love and support from parents who disagree with them. Just absolutely horrendous.
It would be wise for all of us to remember that, rather than questioning the love of parents and their paramount role as the primary caregivers and teachers of their children.
I think you can question the love of parents for their children. It's okay. You can do that.
In addition, the newly proposed legislation will require parental notification and a parental opt-in requirement for each instance a teacher intends to address issues or subject matter involving gender identity, sexual orientation, or human sexuality.
No. A child goes to a public school to be taught things. I don't believe parents have a right to dictate, what is considered crucial curriculum, because this is where a lot of the issues around sex education and consent and all this sort of stuff comes in. If a parent doesn't want their children to know about that, that's a red flag for me. Because when children understand more about sexual health, about consent, about what all of that is, they're better protected against abuse because they understand what it is and what's happening. Like, this is just setting so many children up for abuse. It is disgusting. And yeah, it is legal in this country to be gay, to be queer, to be trans, and to put it in a category where parents can just opt their children out from learning about that shouldn't be allowed. It is part of who we are. To put that in that category suggests that there's something wrong with it, that it needs to be hidden, that somehow it's not accepted when it is accepted in this country. You can't hide the fact that there's queer folks out there from Kids Forever, and it should be taught at age appropriate levels. Like, this is just, I do not agree with this at all. This just sets children up for harm.
Furthermore, the provision of resource materials or presentations to students related to these subjects in our K-12 schools must be approved by the Ministry of Education to ensure age appropriateness and relevance to school curriculum. And finally, as it pertains to women and girls in competitive sports, proposed legislation will be tabled that prohibits individuals born biologically male from competing against women and girls in competitive sporting competitions.
Women and girls. So regardless of age, if you were assigned male at birth, you cannot participate in sports if you are trans. Horrible discrimination. And again, the term biological male, that is, I understand why people were using it near when a lot of this discussion was happening, but that's not an appropriate term. Because the biological differences between a cis woman and a trans woman, after a trans woman have been on hormones, especially if she went through her proper puberty, like, we're just talking, the only difference is their sex organs. That's it. Like, the hormones, everything, their bone structure, like, if you go through the proper puberty, your bone structure is actually different. Your muscle mass is different. Like, it is just, there's such it's such a small difference. And so they are very close. Like, when it comes down to it, once you get the hormones, you are biologically the gender of the hormones you are taking. Like, you are biologically that. So this is just a way, again, of misleading the public, separating the public, but just this idea, this is discriminatory, that you will not allow them to compete on sports, like, and especially for kids before puberty, there's no differences. Like, it's just, this is targeting trans women and girls. And notice how that is a focus on women and girls. You know, this doesn't say anything about restricting trans boys and men from playing on men's sports. No, that's completely allowed. But, you know, trans women and girls, they are being specifically targeted, even within the trans community, to not be allowed to compete on women and girls sports.
This will apply to all competitive women's and girls sports in all provincial sporting organizations, as well as in our schools and post-secondary competitive sporting divisions. Obviously, this prohibition will not apply to recreational or co-ed divisions. And our government will support the formation of additional co-ed and recreational divisions so that all athletes have as many opportunities as possible to compete in their sport of choice.
No, that's not what you're doing. That's not what you're doing.
In closing, I again sincerely ask that as we discuss and debate this proposed legislation, both before and after it is tabled, that we do all we can to depoliticize the discussion and focus on the well-being of the children and youth most affected by these policies. They each need to know that although adults may strenuously disagree on what policies are in a child's best interest, each of us loves and supports them in becoming the person they want to be regardless. And will.
You're doing the exact opposite while telling them you love them. It's disgusting. She is a disgusting human being.
Be there for them if they ever want to talk or need our support. That commitment and care by all of us for these children and youth should not be questioned by either side of a political debate. Thank you for taking the time to reflect on this important issue. And please feel free to contact any member of our government should you have questions or concerns that you wish to communicate with us.
What was that? Feel free to contact them? If you're in Alberta, please feel free to contact them with questions or concerns. Contact them away. Just a horrible, disgusting human being, because they quite blatantly did not, consult the trans community. And I believe I covered that before, because I've covered this subject a lot because this has been going on for a while, and it's, I'm non-binary, I'm queer, kind of hits close to home to me, and it's important. And it's just, they don't consult actual experts. They get, they cherry pick somebody who sort of knows something and they run with it and just ignore and deny the mountains of evidence that shows they are wrong. And here's the consequence of that. Erin Reed, who is a journalist on, well, she's not a journalist on Twitter. She's a journalist and is on Twitter. And a trans woman. This is very close to her heart as well, and has been covering this, especially in the States with all the anti-trans laws that have been happening down there. And she says, according to a heartbreaking study just published in Nature, anti-transgender laws, including healthcare bans, have increased suicide attempts by up to 72% in states passing such legislation. The study is the first of its kind. Subscribe to her journalism. The study is only possible because half of the states in the United States have passed anti-trans legislation, while the other half have passed none or passed protective laws. It has created a cruel natural experiment. And you can read her article about that. I also have a video from Rachel Gilmore that will go over a little bit of this as well. The study was only possible because the Trevor Project has been extensively collecting data. It utilizes a multi-wave survey designed which asks questions at 4 periods starting in 2018. The sample sizes are extremely large, allowing for in-depth analysis. Researchers determined that for transgender youth 13 to 17, suicide attempts rose by up to 72%, attributable to anti-trans legislation. For those 13 to 24, the rise was up to 44 attributable. Researchers controlled for states' differences, COVID, and more. In explaining why 13 to 17-year-olds were more affected, researchers concluded that healthcare bans and bathroom bans often targeted them specifically. They may also rely on their parents or guardians as access to gender-affirming care or other vital services. The increase is significant. According to the Trevor Project, 20% of trans youth in America have attempted suicide at some point in their life. Using the Williams Institute estimated 300,000 trans youth in America, anti-trans laws account for tens of thousands of attempts. This will add to the large number of evidence that trans care saves lives and that threatening it threatens the lives of trans youth. One Cornell review of 51 studies determined that it is significantly improved the mental health of transgender people. There are many studies that show the impact of gender-affirming care on suicidality. For instance, the study published in the Journal of Adolescent Health showed a reduction in recent suicide attempts of 40%. Another study noted 73% lower suicidality among trans youth who began care. These studies have led to historic policy resolutions condemning bans on gender-affirming care by the APA, the largest psych org in the world. And you can see the last study there, and please go support her on her Substack if you can. And I also have a video from Rachel Gilmore, an independent journalist here in Canada, who was also talking about this and just the devastating effects it will have on the children in Alberta should Danielle Smith get away with pushing this legislation through. And so Rachel Gilmore tweets out, "We now have devastating proof that anti-trans policies put kids' lives at risk. A new peer-reviewed study found anti-trans policies increased suicide attempts among gender-diverse teens by up to 72%. The policies are ones some Canadian conservative politicians support."
A brand new study has just provided devastating confirmation of what so many people have desperately tried to warn us about, that anti-trans policies across the United States are leading to alarming increases in trans kids' attempts to unalive themselves, which absolutely blows any claims that this is about protecting kids out of the water, and has led at least one massive LGBTQ rights organization to issue an urgent call for political leaders to drop these kinds of policies. See, a new peer-reviewed report published in Nature found that anti-trans legislation in the US, including restrictions on gender-affirming care and discriminatory school policies, caused up to a 72% increase in self-unaliving attempts among transgender and non-binary young people aged 13 to 24, with the estimated impact being, quote, consistently larger among those aged 13 to 17. The laws they cited included limiting access to gender-affirming health care, as well as access to bathrooms, sports, and school activities that align with a person's gender identity. These are the exact policies we've seen Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre say he supports, and the policies that at least 3 provinces have already put in place or have explicitly said they plan to enact. I reached out to all of their offices today sharing this new report to see if this changes anything for them. I also reached out to the Liberals and the NDP to see if they plan to ramp up their pushback against these kinds of policies. None of them have replied. I'll update if they do. But even if they refuse to act, the paper suggests a potential way that you can help save the lives of these teens. See, in the discussion part of the paper, they explain that the uptick in attempts comes after the laws are debated and enacted. It's not immediate, which makes sense. It comes after these laws impact the lives of youth, like them experiencing more social rejection, isolation, and bullying. To me, this suggests that if you push back and show these kids that they are loved and accepted as they are, you refuse to reject and socially isolate them, this could help mitigate the impact of this kind of legislation. But
there has actually been studies that show that for trans children that are accepted by their communities, by their parents, that get the gender-affirming care that they need, the suicidality rate among them actually drops lower than their cisgendered peers.
That is a drop in the bucket compared to what politicians who are playing politics, the lives of gender diverse kids, have the power to do. And if they actually care about protecting kids like they say they do and want to save their lives, I hope they'll listen to this study. What do you think of all this?
Now, Rachel Gilmore, she does the journalism, but she does so much more. Like, she really does push back on things, and we'll get a little bit more into some of the things that she has done about it, but let's just go a little bit more. So the breakdown on Twitter, they cover Albertan politics primarily. And so this is an example again of just how heartless Danielle Smith is. And they say, this is heartbreaking. Smith was challenged today by a parent of a trans child on her impending policies. Smith responded with lies, saying she doesn't want to see 10-year-olds sterilizing themselves. That simply doesn't happen.
As a little context, because I want some advice. And for a little context, my family, all born and raised in Alberta. I have 2 jobs. My wife has a successful business. My 2 kids are thriving in the province as a result of what I consider to be a good K-12 education. But I'm having trouble explaining to them why we should stay in this province, considering your proposed trans policy coming forward. I have a trans son and a gay son. You tell me why my family should stay in this province with that kind of legislation holding over our heads.
Just the amount of fear trans kids and their families and their friends must be feeling right now. Living in Alberta, I can't imagine.
Well, look, I mean, we're supportive of having children decide who they want to be, but we also don't want to see kids making premature decisions that will result in sterilizing themselves at 10 years of age.
Puberty blockers don't do that. They don't do that. Nothing in gender-affirming, age-appropriate care would sterilize a child at 10. Nothing. Puberty blockers do not cause sterilization. They block puberty. You go off puberty blockers, you go through puberty. Now, for children who might think that they want children in the future, there are workarounds. You know, that they find ways to ensure that those children might be able to have biological children in the future. Like, if there's one thing doctors are pretty keen on, is to make sure that everyone remains, you know, the ability to have children, to the point where they won't even allow 34-year-old women to get their tubes tied even when they have kids, because they might change their mind. Okay, no doctor is just going to half-handedly sterilize a child. That doesn't happen, especially not at the age of 10. This is just a blatant lie, meant to fearmonger among people who don't understand what's happening.
So our policy is to make sure that kids get to a certain age where they understand the consequences of being on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and surgery. And so we've said that minors are going to not be permitted to do those until they're age 16.
So after they've already gone through a good chunk of puberty.
And then when they are age 16, they have to make sure that they've got the support of their families. And
only if their families are supportive, because a lot of families won't be.
Psychologists and doctors to start the transition.
Only if you have access to psychologists and doctors.
We don't want to stop anyone from becoming who they're going to be, but we
want to stop everyone.
Also don't want premature decisions being made before a child even understands what sex is.
Well, maybe if you had comprehensive sex education in your schools, age-appropriate sex education, they would understand what sex is. Like, she has actually been caught on camera openly saying that, you know, a child should basically experience sex before they decide if they want to change their gender, because they might find they like it. Like, that is the actual thing she said. Like, she's more concerned about, you know, the sex life, their future sex lives, than they are about who they are. And here's the thing. your gender, generally speaking, doesn't have much to do with that. You know, people aren't changing their gender because they think they might like the sex better. That's not why that happens. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. It's not about the kind of sex you can have. But for bigots like her, she can't comprehend that. And she just makes it about sex. It is morbid, disgusting, and these are the people that are saying that they're the ones that want to protect and keep kids safe.
Or even understands what having babies means. I think that that's part of what we're trying to prevent.
And so this is just her tweeting out. We don't have to go over these little things here because she said all of that in the video. In Alberta, we believe children should wait until adulthood before making physical changes to their body. So she tweeted that out. And then if we scroll down here, Rachel Gilmore had attached her video to that. Peer-reviewed research shows the exact policies put kids' lives at risk. Are you okay with that? So she replied to this. And like I said, Rachel Gilmore, she goes far above and beyond just being a journalist. She does a lot of activism and pushing against people. And she gets results. She's gotten residential school denial video taken down from Spotify. She's gotten sponsors for talks with the people who were giving the talks were like racist, bigoted, horrible people. She's actually gotten sponsors to no longer sponsors those events. Like, she is very outspoken and is not afraid to, you know, publicly call out these people. And so here she is. She said, Premier Smith, I emailed this study to your office 4 days ago. You didn't respond. Now you're moving ahead with a policy that research has proven will put kids' lives at risk. Why? Support Rachel Gilmore any way you can. She is an amazing person doing amazing work. Just an amazing person. But there is a teeny tiny bit of good news around this subject, federally anyway. So Faye Johnstone says, this is a win for queer rights, trans rights, thanks to all who mobilized with us to make this happen. And this is through an organization she helped to start called Momentum. Just a few weeks ago, we publicly urged the House of Commons to conduct a study on the rise of 2S LGBTQIA plus hate. Those who come across, thanks to those across Canada who joined our call to action, the Status of Women committees have voted to undertake the purpose study. Queer advocacy works. So following our advocacy, the House of Commons Standing Committee on the Status of Women has voted in favor of conducting a study on the rising anti-2S LGBTQIA plus hate. So, you know, it's a step. It's a small step, but it's a step of getting people just aware of what's happening in this country and to do a study on it. Because if you do a study on it, you can probably help better target where this hate is coming from. I'm just kind of shocked, like Danielle Smith isn't getting hit up for hate speech laws, considering what she's doing. It's just so disgusting. But I'm glad that, you know, in this country we have amazing journalists like Rachel Gilmore. We have amazing content creators like Steve Boots just helping to break down this information and there's a word in getting it out to the public, because, you know, it's get informed, get involved. It's hard to change the system when you don't know how that system works. And the more people know about these subjects, the more they will know how they can help and what they need to do to help. And yeah, it's important. There's an election coming up in BC, which I will be touching on tomorrow. So tomorrow I'll be talking a lot more provincial type news. So the BC and elections, some more news here in Ontario and some other things. And so I will be starting a live stream tomorrow at 3. because that time slot is open because the serfs won't be live streaming. And I'll be talking more about that then, because the Conservatives that are up for election in BC are, it blows my mind how horrible these people are. And they have a good chance of winning. And it's just, that's the thing. It's happening here in Canada. The Conservative parties have just gone ultra right wing, and we have to be vigilant because Pierre Poilievre is poised to win at this point, which is just I'm going to check the Sandbox, then I'm going to unwind a little bit. And I didn't want, I still have a lot that I want to get to, but I'm splitting it up, taking advantage of the open time slots. So I will be having, like I said, a live stream tomorrow at 3. I just, again, want to show people this other thing. Make sure I got the right page up. Okay, so I'll touch on that in just a moment. But first, I'll check the Sandbox. So Life Canada can take my God-given, constitutionally protected American free speech from my cold, dead hands. And Shemagli saying, from my cold, dead lips. Yes. You'd be amazed on how many Americans think they can just cross the borders with guns. It is an actual problem with so many Americans trying to come up here with guns just in their car. They don't check the laws ahead of time before they come in here because they're American. They have a right to that. Yeah, but you're not in America anymore when you cross that border, are you? I scrolled up a little bit too high there, so let's see. Who writes sexy novels, Mozart? I'm seeing part of a conversation. I don't know where that comment's coming from. Lady Badash. Sandy, if you classified as adult content, you can call yourself Sandy Cheeks. You don't want sand in certain areas. John Martinez, just like Republican governors passing LGBTQIA hate laws and them being targeted because of them. In Canada, we do have more protections. And here's the thing, is that New Brunswick, Manitoba have already pushed through laws about the pronoun changes in schools. And it was shot down in New Brunswick because it goes against our rights, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Putting a law like that in place goes against the children's rights. And so when it's taken to court and challenged, then it gets struck down. But what Scott Moe did, not in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, what Scott Moe did is he then used the notwithstanding clause to supersede that. So the notwithstanding clause is something that really needs to get taken out of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms because it allows a provincial government to override the Supreme Court and basically take away people's rights for 4 years at a time. They know what they're doing is wrong. They know what they're doing harms kids, but they're doing it because it riles up their base and it gets them votes. Their votes, they're getting votes on the blood of other people. That's how much, it's so disturbing that they would want votes at the cost of people's lives. That getting those votes is more important to them. It is just, horrible people. Grand Theft Autobot, I love how conservatives complaining in sarcasm with the love there about government interference in their lives, yet they love it when the government interferes in women's rights and trans and gay people's lives. Seth Evans, indeed, the one-sided selectivity of their concerns screams volumes about their values, bigotry, specifically the transphobic variety here. Mm-hmm. Like, just even again, still using the term parental rights. Parents don't have rights, they have responsibility. Children have rights. And, you know, I've even seen some comments when I've tweeted something out like, I don't get a say because I don't have children on these issues. And it's like, okay, well, if I don't get a say because I don't have children, then how about you don't get a say on anything trans related because you're not trans? So you don't get to say boo about trans kids either because you're not trans. Lady Badass, yes, hello, trans women here. Gender dysphoria and the depression that came with caused me to have even more difficulties at school, which led to suicide attempts and me dropping out of school. Sorry to hear that. Looney Tunes 9000, send this lady back to her cave. Let's see. So, like, the most angry I've ever seen Jordan B. Peterson get over trans issues was Elliot Page, lol. He did get to seem really upset that, yeah. Like, what? Is it because Jordan is only attracted to women and Elliot isn't a woman? He's a man, and it's like, oh no, you took away one potential person that, like, that's the thing. They're so concerned about other people's gender and them not being attractive to them anymore. It's like, what chance did you have with them in the first place? Like, there aren't other options out there. Like, if one specific person says they will never date you, how do you take that personally? Or if one person is no longer compatible with you dating wise, why do you take that personally? Like, if you had a chance with them at all to begin with. And just having one person removed from the pool doesn't make a difference overall. Like, it's ridiculous. It's kind of like, I know if I want to stir up to get people really angry on Twitter, to get men really angry on Twitter, all I have to do is say, you know what, I'm not really interested in dating white men anymore. And they would just rage and rage. But the ironic thing is that all of those men who would rage are the same men that would call me low value, that I'm too fat and ugly, and that I'm past my prime. But if I said suddenly that I would never date any of them, they would take it personally. Mozart, a student named Quincy today, asked me to refer to him as Q. Why wouldn't I? Yeah. Did you get parental consent for that first? Ridiculous. Should I have told him, I will call you Q when I have a written request to do so, signed by two parents, preferably of different genders? John Martinez, she's encouraging discrimination in violation of privacy. How disgusting. Frodo just walked in here. Frodo, come on. He doesn't bug me too much when I'm doing my live streams. Looks like there's a little bit of somebody coming in here kicking up sand. So thank you to the mods for keeping the sandbox clean of people who want to kick up sand. And then it looks like mods were also arguing. I don't know. I'm only catching glimpses of the conversation. My dogs are goth. Welcome to the sandbox. She listens to the hysteria of right-wing fake news. I believe she knows better, but is grittin' sellout. In her election, she promised she was pro-LGBTQIA+, and others vouched for her. Yeah, they just go where they want. They get the votes for. It's disgusting that we have politicians wanting to govern like popularity contests, but the popularity is often right-wing encouraged. Like it is just, legislation should go through that supports rights of people, even if it's not popular. Grand Theft Autobot, province is on fire, climate change is causing problems, unhoused people in the streets along with inflation, but not people's wages. Healthcare is being stripped away, but hey, evil trans people. Jeannie Bottle, my schools would not have supported me if I told them I was trans. I'm in 70s, 80s. At 15 when they did find out I was trans, they took away my perfect badge. I gained it for being good, took it away. Sad. Sorry to hear that. Like, I just keep on thinking, how lucky kids are these days. Like, when I went to a Pride festival just a couple years ago, and seeing these little kids with NB flags running around, like they know who they are. And like thinking back on my life, yes, I was always non-binary, but I didn't have the language for it when I was a kid. And to see all these young kids now knowing who they are and being able to express it from the get-go just, fills my heart with joy. And to see so many people trying to take that away from them, it's devastating. And I'm not going to stop fighting back against that, because they should be able to be free to live their lives. Like, I can't imagine what my life would have been like if I actually understood who I was when I was a kid, and how I'd turn out if I had known that the term non-binary even existed. My dogs are goth. Oh, good idea, Sandy. I will contact them away. Jeannie Bottle, it was teachers too. It started with teachers, which led to other kids getting away with blatant bullying, even in front of staff. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Like, I knew back when I was in high school, I do remember telling my mom, it's like, I'm definitely interested in boys, but I haven't ruled out dating girls. Turns out that was very true. And I have had a girlfriend, but I didn't tell my friends. Mainly because it didn't come up, but also I didn't want them to suddenly think I was going to be attracted to them, because ain't none of them were my type. But I didn't want them to suddenly start looking at me weird and stuff. And when I had my regular kind of stable job not too long ago, I wasn't hiding it, but I wasn't out either. That I was, I had a girlfriend during some of that, because I didn't want to become the queer in the workplace. You know, whenever they had a question about it, or a concern or a thought, or wanted to say something in front of me to make it sound like they were an ally, or look at me, aren't I so accepting because, you know, this thing or something. And I didn't want to become like that person in the office where they were always coming to and stuff. But I didn't hide it. Like, I had a picture of her at my desk, and, you know, if you saw it, you could probably figure it out. But not too many people were coming to my desk either. Lady Badass, no doctor is going to just sterilize a child unless they're First Nations. Very true. That just reminded me of a very horrific story that I heard not too long ago about a child in foster care, First Nations child in foster care, who was being sexually abused. So they thought it better to sterilize her than, so she wouldn't get pregnant from it, than dealing with the actual abuse. This country. My dogs are goth. I was also bullied relentlessly for dressing like a boy, looking like one. I was sent to Idaho for reprogramming, and it messed me up for years afterwards. Wow, sorry to hear that. You see, my masculine traits, like, I looked very feminine because my chest developed quite large when I was a teenager. And, you know, I had the long hairs, the long nails. I liked wearing makeup and stuff like that. But the traits that I had that were more masculine were often looked on in like a positive sense, even though they were more traditionally male traits. And that's something that I realized, that women can get away with taking on a lot of male traits and it being rewarded. But if a male takes on more common female traits, then they're chided and punished for it. Which, again, that's just misogyny and sexism right there. But I didn't, like, that's the thing. I didn't dress like a boy or anything of that sort. Like, I was very, very hyper feminine. And I think part of that was I was trying to overdo it, you know? Trying to be this idea of what a girl should be. Hello, Christy Zed. Welcome to the Sandbox. And good for Gabby. Hello. I will be having a live stream earlier tomorrow than I would normally have it, because I have lots of news to cover and there are gaps in the scheduling. And I know a lot of people like to have, you know, meet people up in the chats, talk to each other, community, that sort of thing. And I like people to, you know, feel connected. Grand Theft Autobot, cats be like, "Who man, demand your attention, now I'll purr for you and make you go, aww." My cats do that quite regularly. Except in the evenings, like right around bedtime, when they know they're going to get their wet food, Lanier turns into a demon. He is, like, I will walk by my little couch and he's on the back of it and he'll follow me and he will grab at me and he becomes very demanding and bossy and this little demon because he knows, like, it's wet food time, you better feed me. He is, yeah, he turns into a completely different cat at night. Let's see. Some other chatting back and forth in here. Jeannie Bottle, I used to go out for very late night walks when I was a teen. I was picked up by police, which led to parents knowing school and other places. News spread in small town fast. Lady Badash, very much so GTA. It took meeting my best friend who's trans and hearing her story and being able to relate to a lot of it before I had the words to describe the feelings. Yeah, I don't know why this memory just popped into my head, but there was a roller rink in my city growing up that sometimes class trips would go to and whatnot. And I remember one time there was also like another school there. And I remember the friends I had. Okay, so early high school years. And there was this one kid there who was a girl, but I made the comment that, you know, she'd be a very good-looking boy. And it wouldn't surprise me if it turns out that child actually was a trans boy. And then immediately my friend looked at me like, "Are you gay?" They were just so sensitive around those issues, but... Looks like YouTube has been a pain for people tonight. John Martinez, YouTube chats helped me overcome my shyness. That's good to hear. Even at my age, I'm still shy. I don't know what age you are, and I don't know if there's an age where you're not supposed to not be shy. I'm not much of a public speaker. Okay, that's bullshit. I have always been... Well, it depends. I'm a public speaker, so being in front of the camera doesn't bother me at all. But, like, individually, when I'm meeting people, I can still be somewhat shy, but part of it is I'm just trying to gauge what this person is like. And it can take me a while to warm up to people because I have a very interesting sense of humor, and I like to get an idea, a feel of how it's going to play out with them before I start doing my sense of humor around some people. But yeah, I like to have a chat available for people. This is why, like I said, around the holiday season in December, I will still... Last year I did it. This year I'll probably do it again, where I'll still have live streams, because I know it can be a little bit jarring to suddenly not have any of the regular program that you normally have. And a lot of friends and family can go quiet at that time if they're spending times with other friends and family and whatnot, so... Let's see. Sandy, can we check the ban list for BCAT, my account Google.com block list? I don't know how to do that. I will look into it. Because BCAT should not be banned if you're BCAT-K, which I'm pretty sure you are. So I'll look into the banned list. Let's see. John Martinez, I turned 44 on September 5th, same day Freddie Mercury was born. Oh. It's nice to be born the same day as a famous person. Lady Badass, Sandy's friend, what are you, gay? Sandy, yes, I am. I think that was a little bit before I understood, but it's not like I had ever ruled it out. And of all my friends who I was going to tell, definitely wouldn't have been that friend because she couldn't keep her mouth shut. She was like just so keen on gossip. But again, it was just this idea that I was worried that they would get worried that I would be trying to hit on them, when it's like, none of you are my type. You're all fine. I'm not going to get aroused looking at any of you, because I don't get aroused just looking at a body. I need to be attracted to a person's mind in order for that to happen, and none of that was happening with my friends. So Soul Life's just telling me that my account, google.com blocklist, takes you to your ban list. Okay, I will have to look into that. My dogs are goth. I love handsome women. That child was a very good-looking child back then. But they were from a different school, so it's not like I ever saw them again. And Soul Life has provided a link. Lady Badass, I feel that Sandy not much mind in my former friends to be attracted to. I just want to remind people of this thing here. I was part of a book derby, writing derby this year. Can't say the experience was really that good, although I love the book I wrote. It's on this list. I can't tell you which book is mine yet. At the end of October, so like on the 25th, I believe the derby is over, so then I'll be able to do the reveal. So my book is on this list and available for purchase on Amazon. So please go check it out. If you know me well enough, you can probably figure out which book it is. So far, I've sold 0 copies. Now, part of it is because I can't advertise under me, like I can't tell you which book is mine. But I'm also kind of worried my book just really sucks. Because there was a beta reader who read the book as part of this derby who told me that it was unreadable. They didn't give me much in the way of feedback of making improvements, just that the book was unreadable. And they didn't even tell me, like, they didn't finish the book. They didn't even bother to tell me where they stopped reading it to help me out. And so now I'm just really worried that it is a hot piece of crap, because the way it is on Amazon, so if you have like the Kindle Plus thing, you get so many books for free or something like that. And mine's part of that list. So if you have the Kindle Plus, you can read it for free or something like that. And that tells me how many pages have been read. And so far, 104 pages of my book has been read, but it doesn't tell me which page. So it's like, is that one person who's read all of those pages? Or is it like 10 people who have read 10 pages and then given up? Which is also kind of frustrating, not knowing that. And yeah, I'm getting really doubtful I'll sell any copies before the derby is over. And then it starts to make me wonder, like, I used to be so excited about telling everyone about the book and which book it is. And now I'm getting a little bit more, I don't know if I should, but I'll toss the link in here. There we go. It's in the chat so that you can try to guess which book is mine. I can't confirm or deny if you guess it before the 25th, but I would think if you know who I am, you can figure it out. There are unique traits of the book that really do reflect who I am. But it's, I don't know. It was very depressing because like I just felt it deep inside that this is a good book and it was an amazing book and I loved reading it over and over. Like I literally escaped into the world of that book as a way to escape from my reality. And even when I'm stressing out, I'll just go back and read some of it because I don't know the world that I built in it and everything, but it could just all be in my head and I could be a terrible writer. I don't know. So I'll have to see. Because on Amazon, if anybody does decide to, they can leave a comment about it. So far, there's none. That might help me determine if I should go public with it once I can. I don't know. Yeah. And I'm still struggling to get my first book published, which I won't be able to go public with once it does. Just given the content of that book would probably make me a target in ways that I don't want to be a target. But anyway, that's all depressing. Good news, though, I did get good news about my housing situation, and it is stable. It's something that's been over my head for a couple years now, and today I just learned that my housing situation is good. I'm in a stable situation, which just... huge weight lifted off my chest with that. That's for sure. Let's see. I'm going to check the chat one more time, but then I wanted to get out of here because I wanted to get out of here like an hour ago. Remember, chat, if anyone you know is a gossip and tells you someone else's business, you better believe they are telling other people your business. Just a friendly heads up from a private guy. Yeah, I saw that so much with my friend circle in high school, and I hated it. You couldn't tell them anything, and it's hard to have people to confide in. Like, I was the person they could confide in, but I couldn't confide in anyone. I hated the backstabby nature of it all and everything. My dogs are goth. People always said me and my former friend were gay together. She thought they were just picking on a tomboy. She was furious to learn it wasn't just a rumor. I wasn't into her, though. Good for Gabby, saying need to be attracted to their mind. Thought everyone was like this till recently. I don't know, a couple years ago, maybe, I don't know. And John Martinez, dating for me is tough since I prefer intelligent people as well. I've been fortunate to have a few girlfriends who have been as beautiful as one may be. Looks do fade. It's what's in your mind that matters to me. Intelligence is number one. Yeah, I fall into that category, which is part of the reason why I hate dating, is because there's all these expectations on dates and where they go. But with me, I really need to get to know a person first. And I hate this idea of when you get into a relationship, it must bloom in this direction or it must bloom in this direction, as opposed to just allowing it to go the way that it will. So I need to be friends with people first. But if that person is only talking to me because they think that this might turn into a relationship, or they're just looking for a date or something, then it's not going to end well for them. But I do need to get to know a person over a long period of time, because there's certain things that they need to demonstrate over a period of time for me to know that it's like, okay, they didn't just say a intelligent thing, they are intelligent. They need to show compassion. They need to have a sense of humor, as in they need to find me funny. If not, they're really going to get offended at a lot of the things I say. But yeah, so I don't date, and I haven't dated in a long time, and I'm really getting that itch. Like, I really want to get into a relationship at some point, but it's difficult when I work from home. And as much as I may, in fact, be compatible with people in the Sandbox, well, that's a no-no, because, you know, I only know a name on the screen and some words you type in. I don't know who you are. You know who I am, because what I present on screen is very much who I am. However, it is still just a small part of me. It's not all of who I am. You know, I do mask up sometimes when I'm here, as autists usually do. And so what you see of me on here might be attractive, but you don't know all of me. And it gets a little bit more complicated then. But I need to know a person and get to know a person. But just somebody from chat that's a little, you know, you hate to say it these days, but how do I know what you say is who you are and all this sort of stuff? Which again is part of the reason why I hate online dating apps too, because anyone can put any sort of bullshit in their profile and pictures and stuff. It's not until you meet them that you actually get to know who they are. So, like, about the only way that I could see myself dating these days is another online content creator that I get to know, because in a way they're in my work, they're in my profession, and then I can get to know them, because lefty content creators often tend to show a lot of who they actually are on screen. They're not like a lot of grifters on the right or something. You don't have too many leftist grifters because there's nothing here to grift on. And so you do tend to see a part of who they are, at least. And so I could see myself dating like another lefty content creator, but they would have to be within a work day's travel. And by travel, I mean by car. They have to fall within a certain age group, because I don't like big age differences. And I ain't telling you guys how old I am. And yeah. And they have to be single. Like, I'm polyamorous, but I've been out of a relationship so long for me to just ease into one. It'll probably take a lot of effort at this point. And so ideally single to start off, and then once we're comfortable, it's like, okay, open on up. You know the relationship is going well when I'm like, date whoever you want, because then I'm secure. You know, I'm feeling secure in the relationship when it gets to that point. So yeah. I get gabbing like this and suddenly Sandbox builds up again, and now I want to get back to chats. Bad lefty, delighted for you, Sandy. Housing should be a human right. Yeah, I'm still unwinding. Like, I just found out today, and I'm still unwinding from it, and I'm still like, it's still setting in. I don't think it's actually really hit me completely yet. BCAT, Goth, Alberta has a large population of conservatives, right? Imagine your family stressed importance of friendship with conservatives too. See, I'm lucky there. I was born in Alberta, but as a toddler, my mom moved back out here where her family was, to Ontario. I can't imagine who I'd be if I had grown up in Alberta with that family. Like, the family there, when I went there for my father's funeral, treated me great, and they were super open and friendly and stuff. But I'd be a very different person if I grew up with those types of influences around me. Because there's a lot of racism going on there. Good for Gabby. I'm done dating forever, I think. I'm worried I am. I don't want to be. Because I've barely been in any relationships in my life, and I'd like to, give it a try. Like, that's the thing. If people want to be single by choice, have at it. This hasn't exactly been a choice for me. And Genie Bottle, I totally understand, Sandy, and I feel the same about dating. Now we're getting into a whole date thing. I had a special with the Letter Hack where we were talking about dating relationships, because who better to hear it from than a single polyamorous NB and a long-term married monogamous man than to hear dating advice from those two people. Grand Theft Autobot, I'm done dating. I'm married, so, well, I'm polyamorous, so the dating part wouldn't necessarily go away. Like my girlfriend had a husband and he had a girlfriend and the four of us could hang out and everything was hunky-dory. Let's see. Okay. You would have made it out. Oh, my dogs are goth. Okay, I understand. You would have made it out, Sandy. No way your personality would have conformed to that BS. It would have taken a lot more work, I think. Because the older I've gotten, the more progressive and open I've gotten, because I did grow up in a conservative household. And it took me, well, it just took me exposure to get over a lot of it. And then, you know, it starts cascading and building. And so it gets to the point where a lot more things just start making sense without you having to experience first. And you start becoming more open in ways where you don't have to meet a person of said group in order for you to be accepting of them. But it takes a little bit of a build up to get to that point. And I grew up in a very conservative household. And even as a kid, like just thinking of some of the things that I said about bisexual people and queer people, even though at the time I was probably still more open than my friends and family, you know, things weren't exactly, you know, I'm glad I wasn't online. But I grew and I learned and I started to understand more of who I am and become more open and accepting and stuff. So I imagine a lot of that would have still happened, but it would have taken a lot more work had I grown up in Alberta around those people. Let's see. John Martinez, been single 13 years and I like it. I've been single 10. A little over 10. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I'm fine being single, but just given how single I've been over my entire life, I'd like to try the other thing. But something I came up with when I was a kid that stands true to this day is I'd rather be alone and miserable for the rest of my life than to conform and be something I'm not simply to fit in. And so I've been alone and miserable for most of my life. So I will never date or be in a relationship for the sake of dating and being in a relationship. I'd rather stay single than to just be with someone for the sake of being with someone. That said, I would very much like to be someone. Be with someone. But the people I'm attracted to don't tend to be attracted to me. So it runs into problems. B-Cat. Okay, 10 years ago that would have blown my mind, but I totally get it now. And Bad Lefty, I fucking love you lot. You guys are great. Stupid Canadian laws that discriminate against poly people. This environment is a little bit different and a little bit more open. I actually had a published article in a magazine by the Vanier Institute of Family talking about polyamory. It's not up there anymore, unfortunately. I have a copy. It was my only published article, and I had to take it down because the NDP was uncomfortable with it when I was trying to become a candidate. They were uncomfortable with one of their candidates being polyamorous. John Martinez, growing up in urban res like Los Angeles. I was raised by Catholic parents who were homophobic and ignorant, never understood until I studied the Catholic Church. Yeah, I think my stepfather was Catholic, but my family wasn't terribly religious. Like, my mom put me in Sunday school when we were like new to the community and stuff like that. But we didn't do prayer or anything. We didn't talk about God or anything like that. And she ended up taking me out of Sunday school when she realized I wasn't there. All I would do is sit away from the rest of the kids, look out the window at the river because it was right on the banks of a really nice river. And I would just draw pictures of the river all day. So, I wasn't actually getting anything out of being with the other kids there. Because at a very young age, I also realized that I don't believe in a God. And at a very, very young age, which set me apart from people as well. But luckily, my family wasn't overly religious or anything. But there was a lot of bigotry going around in that family. And in particular, Indigenous peoples, because my mom used to try to be like open and be like, oh yeah, I'm fine with the neighbors and blah, blah, blah. And she'd be accepting, of the brown neighbors and all that sort of stuff. But the instant she mentioned Indigenous peoples, you could see a change in her. And it's like, ooh, yeah, that was, there's a lot of racism up here in Canada. But I think she's gotten better the older she's gotten, and partly because of my influence. But I saw that a lot from people in Canada, where they'd be fine with immigrants and their neighbors from, India or something like that, but their tone would change a lot when it came towards Indigenous folks, because then suddenly it's like, oh, well, they're just living off the government and they get all these handouts and they should do blah, blah, blah. No. And it's like, ain't none of you all educated about what's going on. Because even at a young age, when I saw that attitude towards Indigenous peoples, I'm like, there's something not adding up here. Like, no, something is not adding up in my brain about this. Turns out I was right. Oops, keep on hitting this. In defense of my modding over another mod, I was heavily under the influence and angry. It was my father's anniversary, says Bad Lefty. Okay, it looks like there's a little bit of a back and forths going on between the mods. I don't know how to sort it out, but I will look at the ban list and see if BCATK is on there. And because ideally I just, I want people to feel comfortable in the sandbox, for sure. And also, don't be quick to ban people if they challenge me. I've seen that. I've seen comments deleted and stuff of people who were maybe challenging what I was saying. And it's like, don't be afraid of that. It's when people get offensive, say slurs, things of that sort, then absolutely. But if they're just challenging me, then let them. But just don't be quick to ban, I would say. But yeah, I'll see what I can do, because I want this to be a place where people can feel safe and comfortable, but still be able to talk freely. It jumped. John Martinez, fact Sandy, I disliked my family wanting me to have kids. Glad I stayed on the path. Another thing I'm fortunate with is I didn't have pressure for children. And I knew pretty much as young, like as a teenager, as soon as I learned I didn't have to grow up and get married and have kids, I knew I didn't want that. And I didn't. And luckily there was no pressure on me from friends or family to, you know, conform and have kids. Best decision of my life. Jeannie Bottle, 19 years single and over a lifetime, 52.5 out of 55. See, I would tell you how long I've been single compared to the times of relationships I am in comparison to my age, but I ain't telling you all how old I am. So life, I had an ex that was never single. Her relationships often overlapped, which would be fine if her parents knew about it. I should have listened to my guy. It's a red flag. I've known people that would just jump from one relationship to the next, and if they were more than a month of single, they would go insane. Grand Theft Autobot, maybe the NDP were more concerned about conservatives finding out about that and using it against you. To what I would say, and actually did say to the NDP, if they find that out, I'll deal with it. Like, I will confront that shit head on. You know, I'm not about to let some conservative use that against me as some sort of negative when it's not. The last thing a conservative would want to do is challenge me on that on the stage. Bad Lefty, I'm very monogamous, but why in the name of God would I care with how other consenting adults live their lives? Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the people I tend to fall for are monogamous and already in relationships. Or they get into a relationship when I'm interested in them, before they know I'm interested in them or something. Or I tell them I'm interested in them and suddenly they're in a relationship. Never ceases to amaze me the amount of times I'll finally get the nerve up to ask somebody out for coffee, and then within like a month afterwards, they're in a relationship with someone else. And it's like, God damn it. Good for Gabby. I grew up with atheist, progressive parents. They're neo-libs now. Disappointment is real, but could be worse. Yeah. I think I've helped my mom on her journey. I see part of a conversation and then I start scrolling back up to see where that comment came from. But I really should just be ending this now because it is late and I'm already been here for an hour and a half longer than I had planned to. But I get so caught up. I like being social in certain ways. Bad Lefty, Sandy like me is forever 26. John Martinez, most men fail to understand that you never ask a lady their age, period. But I will ask other people their age because I don't like big age gaps. And from what I've been learning, everyone lies about their age online. But I can't deal with a large age gap. That is like, it's trauma related, actually. Large age gaps. If other people do it, fine, whatever, but that's not something I could ever do. Good for Good for Gabby. I'm 29 forever and sometimes 8. Grand Theft Autobot, I'm over 50, but I'm really immature, so it balances out. Yeah, people ask like, oh, how old do you feel and stuff, and it's like, it depends on the hour you ask me. But I don't feel an age, you know? I'm me. I don't feel an age. And I don't see a lot of the core elements of who I am changing over my life. And so it's like, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I should be getting going. So let's do. I'll be doing a live stream tomorrow. I'll start early, and then I can spend all the time I want gabbing because I don't have anything planned in the evening. And if I don't get everything covered tomorrow, then I'll do another live stream on Friday. But I do have a hard out on Friday. Like there's something in the evening that I can't not do. So there's that. But yeah, you guys, you all know the spiel, and I'm still getting distracted by chat. Oh. So, yeah, I need to unwind and enjoy the good news that I got and settle into my home. Okay, so I'll see you all tomorrow. I plan on starting around 3 p.m. and I have lots of stuff to cover with provincial politics and other one-off stories here and there and whatever happens overnight. So, until then, salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. Well, I should probably, God darn it, I should do the whole, everyone who's become a Patreon, I appreciate you so much, and who have purchased things off my Amazon wish list, which is linked in the description box below, means the world to me. Super chats, all of that helps out so much, and thank you to all the mods and to everyone else coming out today. It's great seeing you all. So, let's do this. Salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.